the tape. Let's grind. The tape. We do it a little bit different around here.
We ain't gonna play. We ain't gonna play. Shut up and grind the tape.
Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play. We ain't gonna play. Them dogs in your face.
Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play. We ain't gonna play. Shut up and grind the tape.
Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play. We ain't gonna play. Them dogs in your face. Shut up and grind.
Let's grind.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape.
The tape. Let's grind.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Shut up and grind. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape.
The tape.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro.
The tape.
UGA game day, boy, we ball out. Pull up, put the whole conference in the doghouse. Leave them 6 feet, see me on the win streak. All-star status, go coach, and the bench deep. Right. Offense on 10, how we run it? Your best ain't nothing, we gon' send them boys punting. Yep. Black and red, got them dead on arrival. Defense hunkered down for the tie. Hey, hey, you don't want it with the dogs. Film guy on it, you don't want it with my dog. Break it down, play by play, that's the day-to-day. They know we ain't come to play, boy, it's UGA. Kirby smart, I cannot play the fool. Back to back, we did not come to lose. Back to back, like we got something to prove. Pay your dues, dog nation on the move. What's up?
We do it a little bit different around here.
We ain't gonna play, we ain't gonna play. Shut up and grind the tape.
The tape. The tape.
We ain't gonna play, we ain't gonna play. Them dogs in your face.
Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play, we ain't gonna play. Shut up and grind the tape.
Shut up. Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play, we ain't gonna play. Them dogs in your face. Shut up and grind.
Let's grind.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape.
The
Shut
tape.
up and grind.
Let's grind.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Shut up and grind. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape. Shut up and grind. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro.
Shut up. The tape. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to MBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. What's up? You really like that? Let's shut up and grind some tape.
If there was ever a doubt or if it was ever in question, me and JWill's dedication to this show, let me just tell you right now, we are currently sitting in the studio, just me and him, no Brooks tonight, with a potential hailstorm coming to the area that will almost assuredly cause irreparable damage to both of our vehicles.
Yeah, there's no car coverage here. Speaking as in, I see this alert, hey, might want to pull your car under an awning, anything to protect
Park it in
yourself
the garage.
from large hail damage potential. Like, this isn't just like, like a little quarter size. This was phrased as large hail damage. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen. If it does, we're stuck here no matter what. The show must go on. But
the show must go on, and it will. Welcome in. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe, rate, review, all the fun things that we know you guys love to do for us. First thing we're going to discuss, playoff expansion might be coming down, might be 14 teams, might be 16 teams. We'll go there. We'll give 5 important questions to 4 teams that they have to answer, and they will answer throughout the regular season, and we'll check up on them after the regular season. Whose shoes would you rather be in? We played this game last week, I believe. We're going to play it again with a couple of different scenarios, a little more player-based this time around, and then once again, we will play Factor Cap. But before that, JWill, how's it going, man? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and I know you mentioned it right off the bat. That's what we're going to start with as well, of the potential of even more expansion in the playoff. And I can already feel and hear the moans and groans in the chat right now of this is an absolute money grab. Why are we jumping to conclusions? Why are we going ahead and expanding the playoff when we only done 1 year at the 12-team playoff? We already thought that 12 teams was too much. But before we do any of that, before we do any complaining, let's do a little JWill reads so you don't have to, or JWill and Kirby reads so you don't have to. We're going to go through this entire report from Ross Dellinger, kind of lay out the entire format or kind of what is being discussed right now amongst these conferences, and it's really the Big Ten and the SEC lobbying this. That's kind of what we've been known. I mean, this was even proposed, Kirby, before the 12-team playoff even started. I mean, there was already talks of 14 to 16. So I'm going to go ahead and read through some of these quotes, and we'll just kind of break it down piece by piece, because I think when you get to the end of this, there actually is some maybe light at the end of the tunnel. I think there are some good positive changes that could be coming to the playoffs, something that we specifically towards something that we have complained about or that we said needs to be fixed. So here's the first part. Within the SEC and the Big Ten, momentum is building to further expand the playoff to 14 or 16 teams, assign multiple automatic qualifiers per league, those leagues being the SEC and the Big Ten, but every single league is actually going to get automatic qualifiers in this. We'll get to that later. As many as 4 each for themselves, and finalize a scheduling arrangement together that may fetch millions in additional revenue from TV partners. That's the part where everybody's going to start complaining. The phrase, fetch millions in additional revenue from TV partners, we know the deal, guys. I mean, the college football playoff rakes in money from these TV deals, and that means more money for the conferences, more money for these football teams, and that's worth noting considering revenue share is coming up, Kirby.
Yeah, I mean, this is the main gripe that we all have, and it's a valid one. It feels like we're just expanding and bloating this playoff process until it's going to eventually pop, and something it already has and ruin the sport of college football. But I also think that there's been so much of a rush to quick fix everything. The 14 playoff didn't work. Let's just jump the gate and go to 12 here. That's not working. We're 1 year in, and there's all these other problems that have already arisen from it. Got to expand more. And we've kind of talked about this. When are you going to fix all the problems, and when are you going to stop other problems from arising? And I don't know how this is going to solve any of these issues. I think you do get, teams are going to be happier with their 4 bids. There is somewhat of a bigger advantage for the Big Ten and SEC here. ACC, Big 12 is obviously going to have a gripe about this. But again, okay, cool. So we go to 14 teams. We go to 16 teams. What's going to stop Team 15 from going, we were screwed out of this. We were more deserving of X, Y, and Z? Because it seems to me like the measure that we have for if the playoff system is working or not is, will the playoff games close? If the playoff games aren't close, God forbid, not every single game is an instant classic that ends in a overtime victory or a one-score victory for some team, it's a failure. We got the wrong teams in. They don't do this in the NBA Finals when a team gets swept. They don't do this in the MLB when there's a sweep. They don't do this in the NFL when a team loses by 45 points in a conference championship game. But the measure of, it was a good – they got it right. The committee got it right. And it seems to me like what they're doing here is they're basically shrinking the power that the committee has. Mm-hmm. The original system was 4 teams. We pick the 4. Doesn't matter if you're a conference champion. Doesn't matter how many losses you had. We're picking the 4. We went to 12, and it was we're going to have these auto bids. Conference champions get in. Then we're going to pick the rest. Mm-hmm. There was some argument about that. So now it's going to be, okay, we're just going to give all these auto bids and 1 or 2 or 3 at-larges at this point.
Yeah, and that they get into that too as well, of how ultimately this could end up being where the committee doesn't even matter anymore based on how these automatic buys are set up, or lack thereof, I should say. I'll continue with this. This would be a change that maybe some SEC fans want this to happen, but certainly Big Ten fans and other conference fans want this to happen. But the playoff format change would clear the way for SEC administrators to finally make the long-discussed move to play 9 regular seasons and conference games, and would trigger perhaps all 4 power leagues to overhaul their conference championship weekend. The big kicker there is not 9 conference championship games. We've long known that the SEC is eventually going to shift to playing 9 conference games. It's the last part of that sentence that says all 4 power leagues to overhaul their conference championship weekend, and I'll get into that later too. There's another quote about that describing like what would happen here. What does it mean that they would completely overhaul it?
Yeah, I want to first hit on the 9 comp. I think that is such an overplayed thing nowadays. Yeah. Like you've never once looked at an SEC team. I've never once looked at a Big Ten team or an ACC team and thought, man, the fact that they had to play 1 more conference game than everyone else really sets them apart. The fact that the SEC had to play, 1 less conference game really gave them an advantage. The reality is that there's no advantage, or you can make your argument, you're playing more games in a tougher conference, you get less weeks off to take a breather and things such as that. What's it matter if, an Oregon gets to cakewalk through 9 of the easiest teams in the Big 12 when, you have 16 teams and you're playing the bottom 9. You're avoiding the top 7 or top 5. That doesn't make a difference to me. I've never understood. And what's going to stop this from happening when we do get to this? Just because there is one more conference schedule in the game, it doesn't mean, we're saving the extra slot so Georgia can play Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, and now they get to play A&M, something like that. No. It's going to be it's a revenue play for me. I don't understand the pressure for that, other than teams look around, other conferences look around and go, hey, wait a minute. We have to play 9. They have to play. This is ridiculous. I don't think it's going to change any dynamic for any team whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think that my favorite argument about all of this is, when the month of November rolls around and Georgia has a matchup against UT Martin or whoever it is, and Ohio State's playing their 9th conference game or whatever it is, like, we're in the middle of our conference games, and Georgia, of course, gets their typical cupcake game against UT Martin. What they fail to ignore is the fact that Georgia opened the season against Clemson, and they also played Georgia Tech at the end of the year. So they're really not even – and I know that's not the case for every single SEC team. Georgia's kind of an exception because they play an ACC team at the end of the year. Kentucky is another example of this as well. So I know that there are exceptions to this. I mean, Florida plays Florida State at the end of the year as well. South Carolina plays Clemson. So there's multiple SEC teams that play out-of-conference games that are guaranteed right now at least every single year. But the whole thing about, in the month of November, they get to play these cupcake games. Well, nobody was saying anything when Ohio State opens their season against Marshall, Youngstown State, and what other else team you want to throw in there. So it's kind of touch and go. But again, it's not going to matter anyways because it's eventually going to shift to that.
Yeah.
We'll continue to this. Leaders in each conference have spent the last several weeks evolving a format idea, multiple automatic qualifiers per league. Into a more realistic proposal, the 14 or 16 team model would grant 4 automatic qualifiers each to the SEC and Big Ten, 2 each to the ACC and Big 12, and 1 to the highest ranked Group of 5 champion. It includes 1 or 3 at-large spots, one of those intended for Notre Dame if it finishes ranked inside of the top 14.
So basically what the takeaway from that is, number one, is Notre Dame will be a playoff team until the program ceases to exist,
basically.
And if you do not make a playoff as Notre Dame, you're the head coach, you should be fired on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
The way the brand of that program, the schedule of that program. Now, if they join the ACC, this would be relevant. But if they start playing an ACC schedule, I know they just signed a 12-year deal with Clemson. If they start playing these more out-of-conference games that are tough, well, I mean, they're all out-of-conference games for them. But if you start playing formidable opponents and it's not, we play Air Force every year and we'll throw a Vandy in there to kind of get the SEC in, and maybe we'll play Ohio State every now and then. Like, if you play a true schedule, everyone can look and go, okay, this is on par to what someone in the Big 12, someone in the Big 10, someone in the SEC would play. I have no problem with that. But the reality is that I can't remember the top of my head the last time Notre Dame finished the season outside of the top 15.
Yeah, it's been a minute. And it certainly doesn't seem like that's going to change under Marcus Freeman. I know that it was kind of a one-year sample size for them to make as deep of a run as they did, making it to the national title game. But even before that, Notre Dame, typically a top 15 team in the country. You're absolutely right. So, and there's a reason why they put that in there the way they did. This is built in for Notre Dame to be making the playoff every single year.
The other takeaway I have from this is that the charity event of, here's your Group of 5 playoff spot, you're never going to win it, that continues.
Well, what if I told you there might be 2 Group of 5 automatic bids down the road? Might get in that a little bit. All right, here's the biggest thing, though, from this, and how I was mentioning about that we're talking about the committee potentially and automatic buys changing. Quote, officials describe the 14-team format as a 4 - 4 - 2 - 2 - 1 + 1 model. What does that mean? It means exactly this, in which the top 2 seeds receive first-round buys. There would be no buys in a 16-team structure, and either the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's role is greatly diminished. The committee, its future, as the memorandum stipulates, also controlled by the SEC and the Big Ten, will presumably seed 1 through 14 or 16 based directly on its top 25 rankings. Also known as, there is no longer this, if you win your conference championship, you are automatically seeded in the top 4. You automatically get a first-round bye. It's just, are you one of the top 2 teams? If you are, then you get a first-round bye. But if it's a 16-team playoff format, then they're saying there will be no buys.
And I think we all collectively as college football fans, experts and analysts agree that that's the right move. Last year when we talked about, wait a minute, Arizona State gets a bye week and they were barely ranked inside the top 15 throughout the season. Boise State gets a bye week and no one really thinks that they're the top team. That makes sense to me. The problem is now, and the question you ran into, and the whole reason why these buys were a thing in the first place, was how do you maintain the sanctity of conference championship games? Because if you do this, you've basically rendered conference championship games meaningless.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Kirby, because it says right here, in either multi-AQ playoff proposal, conference championship games likely become less valuable, and a reimagined championship weekend may feature conference play-in games for the automatic berths. These discussions, though preliminary, are happening at the highest levels of conference leadership. So what I've gathered what they mean by this is that one of the biggest discussions that we were having heading into conference championship games last year was, hey, Georgia may not want to play in the conference style game. Mm-hmm. It might be an advantage. Why would you want to go play an extra game while everybody else is sitting at home? Who cares about the first round bye? You just get to go into the playoff with getting an extra week of rest instead of having to go play at Texas in the SEC championship game, potentially losing your starting quarterback or any other players getting injured in that football game and then being down players. So this, what I've gathered, means that you will have your top matchup between the two teams in the conference championship weekend, but you will also have other teams playing games, like seeds 3 and 4 will be playing one another in the SEC for playing games into the playoffs. So not only will you get your conference championship, but other teams will also not be skipping out on a game or an extra game and getting this extra week off.
Now, I like this idea. I think it's smart to do that, to provide back the incentive and the sanctity of the conference championship and bring meaning back to it. Like we talked about it this year. When Georgia beat Texas, it was like, that's great. We won the SEC championship. Did we even need to play in that game? Mm-hmm. And it felt very much that way for both sides of the fan base. My question now is, and the problem that I can see coming down the road, is that the SEC and the Big Ten will always have tougher brackets from here on out.
Yeah.
Because your play-in will run through your conference, whereas you're going to get a 9-3 Tennessee team that's better than a 10-2 Tennessee team that's better than, the Indianas of the world, the feel-good stories. That Tennessee team is going to have to play a really scrappy 4th-ranked SEC. Say it's a Florida team. I'm just throwing out brands this year. Tennessee loses, they don't make the playoff, whereas Indiana will, oh, wait a minute, this isn't fair that we had to go do all this and we had to jump through these hoops because we're getting punished because we're in the hardest conference here. That's a gripe that's going to come up already, I can tell you right now. I do appreciate how you're adding, you're maintaining, how these conference championships matter, but I still think, and it's an unsolvable issue because there are too many teams and the parameters are too wide. Whereas, the NFC and the AFC, there's 32 teams. You split down the middle of 16. You can pick and choose 13 from that, or I believe it is, or 12 from that, and go from there. You can't do that in college football. It's too geographically different. Conferences aren't equal. And unless you admit that and basically say, all right, Big Ten, SEC, you guys are the best, then you're doing that. Now you're creating this whole separate issue where teams say, well, we don't want to be in the ACC anymore. The money's not there. The respect's not there. The bids aren't there. We want to leave the ACC. We want to leave the Big 12, which is then transitioning you to, we're just going to go to a Super League where it's these two teams and there's going to be 15 to 20 teams in each conference, and then everyone else gets screwed. So it's an unsolvable problem that's going to ultimately lead to solutions that everyone's going to tell you that this is much better for the sport. We're getting more meaningful games. We're getting this. We're getting that. And the reality is, I believe that you are changing the dynamic of what made the sport so great. And that's where I see the entire issue. Money grab aside, we all recognize that's what it is. You can blame NIL for this because it's more expensive to field a roster and you need more revenue to do so. So you're going to have to play more games in more meaningful situations. But the reality is that college football was always going to be a flawed system. And for many years and many decades, we appreciated that and said, you know what? It's not about the destination. It doesn't matter if we get to the national championship. As long as we get a BCS bowl or if we get a bowl game for us or we beat the number one team in the country that year, give us something to hold on to, where it's now all set aside to these 8 games, these 16 teams, these, this pair of games is all that matters. Everything revolves around this. And that's the problem that I have with it. It's never coming back. You're always going to have this issue. And you can throw solutions at it and say, yes, college football is better because we have 16 teams and our games are more interesting. But it will never be the same, and it will always be a problem, in my opinion.
Make the Belk Bowl great again. I think that's basically what
Facts,
you just said.
Make
it great again. How about that? Before we go down this dark path, though, a little bit, and I completely agree with you, though, about how it is a flawed system. It was always a flawed system, but that's also what made college football so great, and I think many people accepted that. This is also not a done deal. It's also worth mentioning that this, in the headline, it's that the SEC and the Big Ten are obviously the ones that are pushing this. They're the big motivators behind this. And in this article from Ross Dellinger, it's mentioned that majority of the ACC teams and the Big 12 teams obviously are not okay with the SEC and the Big Ten getting more automatic qualifiers from their conference, but there are a couple of teams from those conferences that are just like, who cares? It's going to be all right. Now, you can make the argument maybe it's Clemson and Florida State that are okay with it because maybe they're going to be joining the SEC. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they would want their future conference to have more automatic bids, or it could just be your Wake Forest and your Pitt. You never know. And it's also worth noting that, of course, to no surprise, the group of five is trying to fight for more automatic bids for themselves as well, which nobody wants that. Nobody even wanted you guys mixed in the first place, but here we are giving you an automatic bid anyways. Thank you, Boise State, for last year. Whatever.
Thank you, Cincinnati, for screwing this entire thing up. Thank you, Cincinnati, for going undefeated in 2020 and then barely losing to Georgia in a Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, then going undefeated in the following regular season, and people going, see, look, these guys deserve it. They deserve a seat at the table. Getting your head bashed in from here on out, everyone's like, we need to include the group of five. I've never understood why the group of five doesn't take their ball and go home and create something else. Create a separate playoff for your own team. Do the 14 playoff. But, that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. We all know that the revenue is in the major playoff, and if you can be that one team that gets there, it can change your program. Boise State's going to be talked about in the national media more so than they were for the next 2 or 3 seasons because of what Ashton Genty and they did that season. So
as an Atlanta Falcons fan, what you're telling me is that my despise for Desmond Ridder goes further back than his time with the Falcons. It goes all the way back to his time in Cincinnati. Desmond Ridder, you're the problem still. I still have beef with you, apparently. You're the one that caused all of this.
I did not mean to inadvertently throw Desmond Ridder under the bus for you, and I feel bad for Desmond, honestly. Doesn't deserve it, but you know what? It is Cincinnati's fault to some degree for people thinking that the group of five can even play with big. And yes, there will come a day in the playoff where a group of five team beats a Power 4 team. It will happen. It does not justify the fact that year in, year out, we are basically having sacrificial lambs take up a spot in the college football playoff because they're never going to win a national title. They're never going to create a substantial run in the sport. And you know what? If they prove me wrong, so be it. But we haven't seen it yet. And time again, we see a group of five teams get their heads bashed in. So
I see a lot of people in the chat talking about Jackson Cantwell. Is he going to come to Georgia? Is he going to Miami? Is he going to Oregon? All those questions. We will be getting to that in the local hour. Sit tight with us. We still got a loaded national hour that we're going to run through some really good topics. We're about to get to a questionnaire that Kirby has come up with, some maybe potential playoff teams as we just hit on the potential expansion of the playoff, along with some other topics. But trust me, we will get to the Jackson Cantwell news. We will preview that. We will give you our final thoughts. All that good stuff. I promise we will get to that, but keep on firing off in the chat. We love seeing you guys interact there. Make sure you hit that like button while you're at it as well. Also, subscribe if you haven't already. Show all the love. And if you're listening to us on podcasts, make sure you leave a review for us. Give us that 5-star rating. That helps us out over there. But getting back to our national hour, though, Kirby, you wanted to do this kind of before and after segment where we sit here in the middle of the preseason. We come up with our biggest questions of some teams that could potentially make the playoff, maybe not even make the playoff. We'll do it for a variety of teams, and we'll list out our questions, do a little bit mid-season check-in. Hey, have these questions been answered? Did this pan out like we thought it would? How did this work out? And then, of course, do a postseason check-in as well. So you told me that you're going to keep track of all these questions, so that is your full responsibility. I'm trusting you with this. But let's go ahead and get into our first team. What are your biggest questions for the Miami Hurricanes? And honestly, I think the biggest questions for them have shifted within a week, because a week removed from today, it was like, what's Miami doing?
Yeah.
They went and got Carson Beck, and they were done. Like, clean hands. Hey, we're good, buddy. We got our $4 million quarterback. That's all we need. Hey, Coach Nycar just hit the portal. Oh, what? What? Hey, we might need some more wide receivers. We don't have any weapons. We lost Arroyo and we lost Restrepo. Hey, we lost our running. Like, all these other questions. But now I think they have 12 players now from the transfer portal just within a week. So things have certainly changed, but still some big questions.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest question has been and always will be this entire season, what does Carson Beck look like as a quarterback? Last year, Cam Ward was everything you wanted him to be and more. He was literally a Heisman contender, a Heisman finals, could have won it had the last few games of the season gone a little differently. I think that this season is going to be largely dependent upon what Carson Beck is able to do for you, not just how is his arm, how does he play, like what does Carson Beck look like as the Miami Hurricanes quarterback? Because if it's 2024 Carson Beck, things aren't going to go very well. If it's 2023 Carson Beck, you have a chance to be a very, very competitive team within the ACC. I think the next question is, how do you replace weapons from
hold on.
last year?
Staying on Carson Beck for a second. No, you're good. I think, too, like the thing with Carson is that he's kind of put back into a similar situation that he was entering the 2023 season at Georgia, where it kind of felt like his back was against the wall. You're being plugged in as a starting quarterback after a guy just ripped off back-to-back national titles at the position. You have big shoes to fill as your team still has national title aspirations, despite you being a first-year starter. Now, obviously, that's not the same exact situation that he's in, but considering what the deal was in 2024, where he did not have his ideal season, he did not live up to this, hey, he could be a top 5 NFL draft pick standard. He's instead back at college. Also, he's coming off of a major injury on his throwing arm. All of this stuff combined into that. It's interesting to see how he's going to respond to this entire situation of kind of a little bit new territory, not just, hey, this is Georgia, this is what we do. Now you're kind of not only having to elevate a program into a different direction and kind of be maybe this saving grace of getting them into the college football playoff for the first time, but kind of saving your own self as well.
Yeah, you could write an entire 30 for 30 documentary about the last 12 months of Carson Beck's career, honestly. That's how up and down it's been for him. That's how many storylines there have been. Some not through his fault, some very much through his. So to see how he responds to all of that and Leeds Miami will be very interesting. Moving on to the second question I have, and this is the next big question that we kind of talk about what they're doing in the portal. How do you replace weapons that you lost from last year? Xavier Restrepo, Arroyo, even Cam Ward to some degree, we kind of hit on that. Those are all very, very big names that left. And we saw that they're making moves in the portal. And you don't have to exactly replicate the successes they had. But there has to be some form of, okay, we have these guys this year. You expect there's going to be a drop-off. How do you replace that? How do you supplement your team elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, they returned Josiah Trader. That's kind of the biggest name that they have right now. And even though that they did retain Nikar, didn't really see a whole lot of him as a true freshman, so that one's still a big question mark as well. So despite the fact that you did retain one of your top wide receivers, I put that in air quotes because you're just kind of assuming that. That's what we're projecting about Nikar because they don't have a whole lot of options there. But they did bring in 3 transfers at wide receiver. They got C.J. Daniels, they got Keelan Marion, and then they also got Tony Johnson as well. So definitely got some more depth there. That was the biggest thing for them. But again, do you have a Xavier Restrepo, who is very much so a safety blanket for Cam Ward last year, so much so that he was bidding for NFL teams who drafted him to do the same? Now they're both with the Tennessee Titans, and that seems like that's off to a good start for Restrepo. And then Elijah Arroyo, that was the star tight end for them this past year. He's in the NFL now, and he was a big playmaker for them. So these are kind of the things that we're still having questions about, despite the fact that you allocated resources to the position, still kind of questioning it a little bit. Kind of the same thing with Georgia where – yeah, you still you went and got guys out of the transfer portal. You went and got Zachariah Branch. You went and got Noah Thomas, but that doesn't automatically make the questions disappear about the position. Still have them because you have to see it. You have to have a proof of concept about it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the most important thing is getting that proof of concept from these new weapons. A third question I have, and this is going to be exact proof of concept. You're not going to be able to answer this until the regular season's over. How are you in the clutch this year? I think people forget how – I'll say it, lucky Miami got last year in 2024. You had a questionable ending to a Virginia Tech game that I, to this day, believe you should have lost. The ACC
should have lost.
Might have done some things to say, that actually was a touchdown, not an interception. I mean, they had a 21-3 comeback against Cal on the road. There was a point where I think it was against Louisville or something like that where they had to come back from behind and pull that game away. There were a lot of times this year where you look back at it and you're like, damn, Miami was a play or two away or a bounce here or there from being a 7-5 football team. Now, that's on the losses, too. The Syracuse loss, the Georgia Tech loss, both of those were close games. But
yeah, and I mean, the Syracuse one was the epitome of clutch up or shut up because this is the final game of the season or the regular season. You are playing for a spot in the conference title game. This is how you're going to make it into the college football playoff. And you squander a lead to Syracuse, and you lose all hope. And now SMU and Clemson are playing in the conference title instead, and Clemson does the job instead and gets their automatic bid into the playoff instead of you. So It is kind of clutch up or shut up again. I mean, Mario Cristobal has consistently had this issue of not being able to close out games in big-time situations, and it's not even just like the lack of pushing the pedal to the floor type of deal where you get complacent in the second half. It's just boneheaded mistakes. I mean, the Georgia Tech loss a couple of years ago, it's still inexcusable. Like, why are you not just needing the clock out? Instead, you want to run a play, and then you end up losing the ball game. Like, can you fix these things?
So, yeah, that's question number 3. Question number 4, I think, is going to be very dependent upon that, what the success of your season is. Can you win the ACC? You look at that schedule, it's very manageable. If you win the ACC, you're obviously going to be a playoff. Can you even make it to the ACC championship? They haven't done that since 2017. They've been on a very, very downhill slope at Miami. The schedule is fairly manageable. Notre Dame, we have to assume that's an L, but guess what? Not a conference game. You can lose that game, doesn't matter. Bethune-Cookman, USF, Florida, Florida State, Louisville, Stanford, SMU, Syracuse. The SMU game is going to be hard. The Syracuse is going to be hard. But other than that, there's not a ton of games on here where you go, that's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Miami could very, very easily pull 10-2 here.
Yeah, 10-2, and your 2 losses being out of conference to where you're undefeated in conference play. That being Florida and Notre Dame, I would say that's their 2 hardest games right now for them. Now, the SMU game, that's going to be a little bit of a tough one. And I think they have another game in there that would be considered. I think Louisville's on the schedule as well. I like Louisville coming into this year with Miller Moss. They've been a team, too, to test Miami in years prior. So I think that for an ACC schedule, you have some testers in there. But considering what you are spending on your roster, considering what you consider yourselves to be by going and purchasing a $4 million quarterback, that would say that it's win now mode for you guys. You guys believe that you have aspirations to make the playoff this year, so you should consider yourselves as favorites amongst that schedule.
This next one can kind of be a blessing and a curse for you. Do you show you're a playoff caliber team against other playoff caliber teams? The only one on this schedule that we really look at right now and go, that's probably a playoff caliber team is Notre Dame. If you don't play well against Notre Dame, the rest of your schedule could be like, yeah, they've played fine, but look what they did in Notre Dame in week 1. So you kind of – now the good news of that is you don't have as many hard games to play. You can go out and you can beat the shit out of everyone. Hello, Indiana. And people say, that's a playoff. Look how they've beaten everyone. But the fact is you have to kind of measure up against Notre Dame. That's going to be the measuring stick for how their entire season goes, because if you win that game and Notre Dame goes on to have another really, really good season – well, Miami beat that Notre Dame team. They are clearly a playoff caliber team. So. Yeah,
the first week overreactions from that Miami-Notre Dame game are going to be off the charts because it's either going to be Miami and Carson Beck is the future. They're going to win the ACC. They're going to be a playoff team. And then it's on the inverse. It's going to be, Marcus Freeman, one-hit wonder, lightning in a bottle. They're losing to Miami, a bunch of bums. Or on the flip side, Notre Dame's going to continue their run, and Miami's going to be in the pooper, and they wasted money on Carson Beck because they couldn't even beat Notre Dame.
The pooper, I love it. All right, moving on to our next team, Ohio State. First question I have for them is, how much do you miss Will Howard, and what does your quarterback situation look like? They haven't even named a starting quarterback yet. We all know that Will Howard's not going to be there this year, and for as much as, some people on this show want to criticize Will Howard, I think it's safe to say that he was a deciding factor in that national championship run. He played very good football towards the end, and he honestly kept that team together at some low points. So can you get a quarterback that does things like that for you?
Yeah, and I think it can't be understated how much of a leader he was for that team. I mean, for a guy to walk into a program his first time being around that roster, and again, this is an Ohio State roster last year that returned a lot of veteran players, guys that have been in that program for the last 4 or 5 years and have kind of owned that stance of being a leader in the room, a guy that represents the Ohio State Buckeyes. And he walked in there and became an instant leader, a guy that people look up to. And while that you can say that's just kind of coach speak or whatever you want, I mean, that stuff matters. And I think it mattered during their college football playoff run, the fact that they did have a guy like Will Howard who kind of did put the team on his back a little bit, played phenomenal football for the next 4 games and won them a national title. So whether it is Julian Sayin or whether it is Tavian St. Clair, it is going to depend on, how much are you actually going to miss Will Howard because of what he was able to do in the offense, what he created for you, and also just kind of that leadership spot. Because, Julian Sayin and Tavian St. Clair are both new arrivals to this roster. These are not guys that have been on this roster for a hot minute.
No, they are not. Next question is, does Jeremiah Smith have a sophomore slump or surge? That is a very important question.
A sophomore slump for Jeremiah Smith, though, might still be 900 yards.
It very well could be, but if it's not, you have to wonder. If Jeremiah Smith's not the guy in your offense this year, you'd have to bet that Ohio State offense suffers greatly. And we've gone through 5 or 6 seasons of Ohio State having a 1,000-yard receiver and having one of the best receivers in college football, but And you would all bet, and the college football world kind of seems to be banking on this being a sophomore surge, or at least replicating what you did your freshman year. But if it's not, that offense could be in a very interesting position. You lost 2 of your starting running backs last year. Quinshon Judkins, Trayvon Henderson are no longer there. If your next bell cow wide receiver isn't really producing to what he did last year, things could get ugly for Ohio State.
Yeah, and if he's having a slump in his sophomore year, that probably also indicates your quarterback play is not up to the standard that you were hoping it to be. But I think you hit on something important, too, of how are you going to replace Quinshon Judkins and Trayvon Henderson? I mean, those guys were arguably the best duo in college football last year. They were bona fide playmakers. Trayvon Henderson had a tremendous college football playoff run. And so replacing both of those guys, both NFL caliber running backs, that's another question in itself as well.
All right, this next question I kind of don't love asking because I think the answers to it are going to get overblown. But what does Week 1 against Texas look like? That is the most important Week 1 game we have. That's 2 teams that met in the college football semifinals or playoff semifinals last year. Very, very big movement. It's a Week 1 game, so it's going to kind of be used as a measuring stick. We have to ask because it's going to be a very important regular season game, but I don't want to overblow the importance of that game.
I mean, as we mentioned, though, with Miami, this is kind of your measuring stick. Now, Texas is going to go play in the SEC. Ohio State's going to go play through the Big Ten. They're going to have other games that indicate where they are throughout the season. But this is kind of the ultimate measuring stick because we believe that these 2 teams are both top 4 programs heading into the 2025 season. Arch Manning entering his first year as a full-time starter, and then, of course, whoever Ohio State chooses as well. So certainly a big game for both of them. This is in Columbus, too, isn't it?
It is in Columbus. It's a home game for Ohio State.
That's a big kicker as well. So you lose to Texas to start the season in front of your home fans after winning a national title. Will be interesting to see what the reaction to that is.
Next one, I think this is the very important one. What does the defense look like without Jim Knowles? Talked about Jim Knowles last week, how he wanted to stay, but Ohio State probably didn't pull the trigger in time for them to make that happen. What does the Ohio State defense look like without Jim Knowles? There's still a lot of talent on that roster. Caleb Downs still there. They've got a couple guys on the D-line that are still good, but what does it look like schematically, talent-wise? Can you develop players even more?
Yeah, and I think that the response to that is it may not even matter because of the way Ohio State recruits, the type of guys that they get up there. I mean, they recruit with the best of them. So they have really good football players, Caleb Downs being one of them, arguably the best defensive player, maybe the best player in college football right now, certainly going to be a first-round pick. So that solves a lot of your issues. That guy is a quarterback in himself for the defense. So I think he helps alleviate some of that, but I would imagine a guy like Mike Vrabel going to be able to figure out how to have a defense responding well for him this season.
Is Mike Vrabel actually the DC there?
I
thought Mike Vrabel was the Patriots head coach, and Ohio State fans were just joking that they could sign him.
Oh, you're right. Who did they end up hiring again?
I don't remember. I'm blanking on the name right now, dude. Either way, Mike Vrabel's not the Ohio State.
Matt
DC.
Patricia. I knew it was in the Patriots logo getting all messed up for me. I knew it was a former NFL guy. Matt Patricia. Matt Patricia is going to have those guys responding well in 2025. I would imagine. That's on me.
That's what happens when you're live on air. We make mistakes sometimes. Good Lord.
We're human, you know.
Exactly.
We'll own up
Question
to it.
number 5, and the most important for me: are you going to underperform like you did last regular season? We can all come into last year say, yeah, the 2024 playoff run, that Ohio State, great. Could make the argument for the best team ever. I'm not going to do that, but 2024 regular season Ohio State was good. They were great at times, but there was way too many inconsistencies. The Oregon game, that's fine. A 1-point loss because your quarterback made a bonehead decision, that's fine. Losing to Michigan, unacceptable. The game against Nebraska, unacceptable. Multiple slow starts offensively throughout the year. Didn't love what I saw from Ohio State in the regular season. It's why what they did in the playoff was such a surprise. I don't think this year's roster can survive the kind of mediocre underperforming that you had last year's regular season. So are you going to repeat that this year? That's the most important question for me.
Yeah, and this kind of ties back into the quarterback conversation as well of regardless of if it's Sayin or if it is St. Clair, I mean, if you are having ups and downs in the regular season, that probably is going to weigh on your starting quarterback. So you might have a situation where you're kind of still feeling out who your starting quarterback is going to be for the remainder of the season if it does happen like that. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see if they do have some slow starts this year, if Ohio State is kind of up and down offensively, because you're implementing new football players. You're implementing a new starting quarterback. The running back situation we already talked about. You have Jeremiah Smith as your safety blanket, and that wide receiver room is always stacked, and it's got really good players, but they can only do so much for you. So definitely intrigued to see if they underperform, but didn't even matter for him last year.
Right. All right, let's try to get these next two teams moving on quickly. Team number 3, I don't know why I started numbering it out. How different is culture under Alabama in year 2 of Kalen DeBoer? I think that's going to be very important. We saw last year, we heard some inklings that, man, they're not even practicing. It's too lax of an environment. Now we've heard this offseason, Kalen DeBoer's got that shit locked down. It's 0 dark 30 over there. It's very strict. It is no longer a Nick Saban team coached by Kalen DeBoer. It's a Kalen DeBoer team coached by Kalen DeBoer and company. How different is the culture change this year? That's important to me.
I think it is worth noting for Alabama is that the fact that they did get players that threatened to leave and enter the transfer portal, that they returned, that they had enough bleed. Now, I understand money is at play in these situations. If you enter the portal and you come back, that's kind of what you're kind of holding your team hostage in that situation. So I understand this is not just them saying, yeah, I believe in the Crimson Tide. I believe in Coach DeBoer, along with the $800,000 that I got on the side. I understand that's at play, but those guys still had to have some type of belief of the direction of the program under DeBoer for them to return for another season. Then based on the comments that we've heard this offseason about how you can no longer arrive late to practice, maybe DeBoer, first off, why is that even an option in the first place? But that's another story. Second off, though, like it seems like things are turning for them, but you got to kind of see it to believe it. I mean, watching the crash outs happen on the football field, especially last year against Vanderbilt, one of your senior leaders.
Beautiful crash outs.
I mean, that just can't be happening anymore. And then also you can't be having these slip-ups where you beat Georgia at home and you look like a national title contender and everybody's saying you're the best team in the country, and then you get blown out by Oklahoma to close the season and no longer be in contention for the SEC championship game. Like, those types of things can't happen.
Cannot have that happen. Question number 2, how good is the quarterback play and who is it? I think that's going to be a very important question moving forward. What does the post-Jalen Miller era of Alabama look like? And this will be Kalen DeBoer's first quarterback at the Alabama program, so kind of interested to see how they play.
And I'll go back to my original point when I was talking about Alabama's quarterback room, I believe it was last week, where Ty Simpson should be the starting quarterback, and if you are starting Keelan Russell this year, that is not a good thing. It is not a good thing if your true freshman quarterback is the one starting at quarterback for you this year, because that means the first plan was a fail. The first plan being Ty Simpson. If that one goes off the rails, that likely means your season is in the gutter, hence why you're throwing the true freshman quarterback out there, because it's like, well, we might as well get this guy some reps and we better start preparing for 2026. Ty Simpson, I believe, will be the starting quarterback, but regardless, the reuniting of Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer, I think, is the biggest factor here. And then Kalen DeBoer getting to run his entire offense, not having to kind of do a makeshift offense of, hey, Jalen Milroe's a tremendous athlete. Let's see what we can make happen with that.
You segued that into my next question perfectly. How does Ryan Grubb change this offense this year? We talked about it last year. Having Ryan Grubb not there clearly had a problem with Kalen DeBoer, and probably the quarterback position limited what you could do offensively, what you wanted to do. So how does Ryan Grubb change? I think that's a very important question.
And I think this alleviates some of the stress on DeBoer, because last year you thought you were bringing your buddy and Ryan Grubb with you. Instead, he goes to the Seattle Seahawks and takes that job instead. So now there's a little bit more pressure on you to kind of come up with this offensive game plan and really lead this offense and control it, because it is yours and you're trying to do what you want to do. Now you got your buddy back with you. You can kind of let him run things. This is a guy that you trust. Again, Ryan Grubb is a guy that has followed Kalen DeBoer everywhere he's gone. This isn't just somebody that got together in Washington and then became buddies. I mean, there is a long lineage of Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer having success together.
Similar to the Ohio State question, what is Ryan Williams? Does he have a sophomore surge or slump? He's going to be a very important component of this offense. He's going to be the quarterback's best friend, whoever it may be. If he's not performing like he did last year, you'd have to imagine that Alabama offense is having some issues.
And I think what's interesting, too, is I think if anything about Jalen Milroe's game, what we'd say he did really well was he completed deep shots and he made the most out of explosives. He hit those more times than he didn't, or at least it felt like that way to me. So interested to see how that plays out with Ty Simpson or whoever it is at quarterback. If that continues, he'll be in good shape.
All right. Final question. Do you have uncharacteristic performances like last year? I think we touched on it a little bit. You can't look like the best team in the country against Georgia and LSU and then look like the most unorganized, poorly coached, lackluster team against Oklahoma and against, of all teams, Vanderbilt and Michigan at the end of the year. So you can't play it down the middle at least. Be consistent, but being uncharacteristic is very bad. Moving on to our final team, the Texas Longhorns. First question, I'm not even going to bother asking it in the form of a question. Arch Manning.
Arch Manning.
What does he? Is he Arch Manning? Is he what everyone builds him up to be? That's the only question that we need to worry about.
Enough said.
Enough said. Next one. Can you finish games this season? I think it went under the radar last year. Texas had a lot of issues finishing games in the clutch. It reared its ugly head against Georgia in the SEC championship, against Ohio State in the semifinal. Almost happened to you against Clemson in the playoff game. You had a 21-point lead that got diminished to 7 at one point. Took a late game for you, late touchdown for that. They did it against Florida. Like, Texas was a very, very poor fourth-quarter team last year. I don't necessarily love the idea that you're going to do that for 2 years in a row and survive with the record that you did. So, are you going to be having poor finishes like you did last year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think that is something that isn't talked about enough for Texas. There were some moments where they, and especially for an offensive-minded guy like Steve Sarkisian, to kind of lack being able to control the offense and really keep things rolling, they did struggle to close out games.
Next question I have. How does the defense look after all of its departures? They had 5 players drafted defensively.
Really good players.
Have a little bit of returns. The Michael Taft kid at safety, I think, is going to be really, really good
Anthony
for them.
Hill. He's
Anthony Hill. They have a
player.
lot of good players on defense. They're at a point now where I put them on the status of like Saban Alabama teams and Georgia teams. Like, yeah, they lost a lot of players, but there's still going to be a lot of talented guys left over. Question is, how do those talented guys perform? What do you look like without absences there? So that's an important question to me. Next question, will the running game be better in 2025?
Yeah.
You can attribute 2024. They had a lot of injuries. I know they lost 2 guys before the season even started. Had a couple of injuries on the O-line throughout the season. It really changed the way that they ran the football. And I think that they called on Arch Manning a little bit to kind of supplement that at times.
Yep.
The running game has to be better in 2025. I understand that there were circumstances last year, but it has to be better. Will it be better is my question.
Yeah, C.J. Baxter, getting him healthy this year alongside Arch Manning, who is a threat out of the backfield himself, he'll be able to keep defenses honest. But if C.J. Baxter can be that difference maker, I think they'll be fine. But, yeah, the run game last year was very up and down for Texas, and it struggled at times. I think you can kind of pinpoint those 2 things as one of the biggest reasons why they were not able to beat Georgia in any of their games, is because they were not able to run the ball effectively.
All right, and this one is one that is not going to be answered even when the regular season's over, and it's one that you kind of – a lot of teams get this question, and a lot of teams, have to answer it, and they almost never do, but it's been asked of these teams that come very close. Will you finally get over the hump? I feel like Texas has become the new team in the sense that, everyone wants to say they're the new Georgia. I think Texas is the new Georgia pre-national titles, where it's, this is one of the best teams in college football. No ifs, ands, or buts. They're top 5 every year. We're going to put them there. But we don't necessarily trust that they're going to be able to go all the way and cross the finish line. Georgia did this for what felt like 30 years, my entire life as a Georgia fan. Texas, I think, is starting to get this same sense now. So it's, okay, we have very good teams every year. We're going to be a top 5 team every year. We're going to be competing for conference titles. We're going to have really, really good players that go in the first round. But we do not have a national title to show for it. Can we get over the hump this year?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They are kind of this team now where it's like, hey, time to win a national title, Steve Sarkisian. We're kind of getting in to this point in time as Texas's head coach where his push comes to shove. I forgot that we did not tell everybody where Brooks was, and people are curious in the chat.
He quit. He's not here anymore. He's not on the show, and he will no longer be.
Hence the name change, guys. Like, come on.
Yeah,
had to change the nameplate.
You're too damn tall for the camera to pan it all, so I'll go ahead and just give us a preview. That's
yes.
not the film.
If my joke wasn't obvious enough, I am not Brooks Austin, in case you were wondering. But Brooks is in South Georgia, still on the recruiting trail, still looking at some prospects in the state. Specifically Georgia fans, he's looking at a recent Georgia commit that we will be talking about during the local hour as well. So I'm sure that he will have some goodies to bring you guys later this week when he makes his ultimate return to the studio and is back doing show with us. But let's get into our final segment, Kirby. This is one that you and I did last week as well. I thought it was some great content, so I wanted to continue it. Whose shoes would you rather be wearing this season, Christian? And we'll start it off with a nice, I wouldn't say easy one, but a well-known one that we can kind of debate a little bit. Arch Manning or DJ Lagway?
If I'm Arch Manning, I'd rather be wearing Arch Manning shoes because I believe in myself and I'm everything. If I'm everything that I think I am, I will be a college football god. However, from the outside, I would not want the Arch Manning pressure. I have to live up to my 2 uncles that are future NFL and NFL Hall of Famers, Super Bowl champions in the Hall of Fame for each of their respective colleges. I have to do that on my own at Texas at one of the biggest brands in college football. I'll take Florida, where I'm beloved I'm in a program where I necessarily don't have as many expectations of me. And if I'm Arch Manning, I believe in those. I believe in myself enough. Arch Manning would much rather be Arch Manning because the ceiling is so freaking – the ceiling is non-existent for Arch Manning in college football world. For DJ Lagway, though, I would not want to personally be dealing with all those expectations 24/7.
I think it is worth noting that, like, there is a difference between the ceiling of Arch Manning being the first overall pick and DJ Lagway being the first overall pick. Like, equally the same just on the surface level of both were the first selection, but Arch Manning being the first overall pick weighs a little bit more than DJ Lagway being the first overall pick just because of who he is. But I think because this is why I propose this question, because Arch Manning has to live up to the name. He has to live up to all these expectations that have been set on him. He needs to win a national title, all this other stuff. That's a lot of expectations to live on. DJ Lagway not really expected to have to win a national title at Florida, but you got a head coach that is counting on you to save his job, and that alone is a lot of pressure for yourself. So I think that they both have a lot that they're dealing with going into this season. I think I would rather be in DJ Lagway's shoes, though, because you go out there and kick off a 9-3 record, Florida fans are going to be very happy with you.
Absolutely. And by the way, no one remembers the name of the quarterback that got the coach fired.
Yeah.
No one remembers that, Grayson Lambert was the reason Mark Richt didn't work out at Georgia. No one remembers that. It will fall on the coach all the time. If you are the descendant of Peyton and Eli Manning and you don't turn out to be and Archie Manning, by the way, if you don't turn out to be one of the greatest college football quarterbacks, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, you will be looked at your entire life as a failure. And I don't love that idea. So I would much rather be DJ Lagway.
All right, let's get into one current Alabama guy, one former Alabama guy, both heading into interesting seasons for them. Would you rather be Ty Simpson or would you rather be Julian Sayin?
I'd rather be Ty Simpson for the fact that I don't want to follow up a national championship winning quarterback simply off the fact of, one, it felt like the Jalen Milroe experience was very sour by the time he left Alabama. By the time
apparently not. I ran into some Twitter beef this past weekend because I took a shot at Jalen Milroe, and Alabama fans came raining down on me saying I was a dumb idiot for saying anything.
Let's pull the Twitter logs from January 1st when that Michigan game was occurring and see some of the very savory things that were being said about Jalen Milroe from Alabama fans, and
Kirby,
we'll see how much they love him.
I had someone in my Twitter mentions say that Jalen Milroe has a higher ceiling than Travis Hunter. Yeah.
I'd rather be Ty Simpson. I'll leave it at that.
Having to follow up a national, and I feel like Ty Simpson going into this year has a little bit more safety around his job, where we left spring in Ohio State. I know that Alabama hasn't solidified him as a starting quarterback, but we left the Ohio State spring game, and it's still kind of up in the air of, is it going to be St. Clair? Is it going to be Julian Sayin? So I think that Ty Simpson is probably in a better overall situation just for his career arc. Not necessarily talking about what he has around him on the roster or anything like that, because Julian Sayin very well could be thrown to Jeremiah Smith. But I think that Ty Simpson is kind of in a better position as far as like a quarterback career path goes.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the next one. What do you got?
Joey Aguilar and Bryce Underwood. Now, this might seem a little bit weird. Why are we pitting these two quarterbacks against one another? And this is why. I think both of these quarterbacks can go into the season a little bit carefree. I think that no matter what Joey Aguilar does, Tennessee fans really aren't going to care that much. And even if Bryce Underwood doesn't lead Michigan to a successful season of 9 wins or 10 wins or whatever it is, he's going to look immensely better than the guy that was before him. They're still going to be pleased with the fact that they have Bryce Underwood on the roster. So who would you rather be in that situation of two quarterbacks where the fans probably couldn't care what it looks like?
I would rather be Joey Aguilar, and I maintain, and maybe it's just I was too enthralled with the Nico Iamaleava situation and was too tied into what Tennessee fans were saying about him, but I think that Tennessee fans not only are going to want Joey Aguilar to succeed, they're doing it not only for the fact that when Joey Aguilar succeeds, it helps your team. When Joey Aguilar succeeds, it is in spite of the guy who left you. Mm-hmm. If Jake Fromm went out, and I hate that I keep tying these back to the Georgia things, but if Jake Fromm went out and won the Heisman when Justin Fields transferred, Georgia fans would have been that much more supportive of it. Now, on the flip side, if Joey Aguilar starts playing poorly, it's going to be, God, we could have had Nico. We could have had, but instead we got stuck with this bum. So I still kind of want to be Joey Aguilar just because I think the expectations for Bryce Underwood, like you said, it's not really existent in 2025. It's kind of, we'll wait and see. But at the same point, I don't think that there's going to be, I might talk myself into Bryce Underwood. I'm just going to stick with Joey Aguilar.
I would go Bryce Underwood here because there's potential for, if Joey Aguilar plays poorly, there's a world where George McIntyre gets thrown into the mix and he's a starting quarterback, or Jake Merklinger gets thrown into the mix. He's a starting quarterback for Tennessee this year. Bryce Underwood, I mean, we saw what the standard was last year at quarterback. I think he would have to do a lot to lose his job.
You've won me over. I'm taking Bryce
Also,
Underwood.
on top of that, the fact of how much money they just paid this guy, no way they're going to bench him in his first season as a starter no matter what. I mean, it feels like you have to play the guy. So I'll take the stability with Bryce Underwood all day long. And if you beat Ohio State, who cares what you did the rest of the games?
Agreed. Number 4.
Another funky one, but Jonathan Smith or Mark Stoops. Jonathan Smith being the head coach at Michigan State, Mark Stoops obviously being the head coach at Kentucky. Now, I would say that here's where I drew the similarities here and why I wanted to compare the two or pick between the two is neither one of these programs really have playoff aspirations. Neither one of them are really expecting their programs to be great. They just want them to be competitive. They want them to be a pleasant team to watch on Saturdays. They want them to be just enjoyable, not just insufferable. But on the flip side, one is playing in the SEC, so you're kind of being compared to other teams. And Mark Stoops has kind of proven, hey, we can be one of the upper-tier teams in the SEC. We can be in the contention for a higher spot. Whereas Michigan State kind of been in the dumper since Jonathan Smith got there. Shout out to what happened with Mel Tucker. That's kind of a deciding factor in this, but kind of like no real aspirations here, but one's in the SEC, one's in the Big Ten. Which would you rather be?
Off expectations alone, I would rather be Jonathan Smith.
Just vibing, man. You're just out there.
I'm just out here vibing. At Michigan State, we're not very good, but there's not really immense pressure for us to be good. There's not really immense pressure for us to be good at Kentucky, but as someone who's frankly more tied into what the SEC fan bases are saying, it feels like the Mark Stoops experience at Kentucky is starting to get a little old amongst fans. I think that the quarterback play has been on a steady decline since Will Levis left, and that has resulted in the overall team not playing as well. I think this could be Mark Stoops' last season, whereas I think if you go 7-5, you buy yourself another year if you're Jonathan Smith. So I'd rather be Jonathan Smith.
I'm picking Jonathan Smith because I don't want to have to pick Zach Calzada as my starting quarterback.
Yeah, crazy stray for Zach Calzada there. Sorry if you're watching.
He beat Bama. He still got that to his name.
Holy shit.
That's his only
Bama
claim to fame right now.
4 seasons ago.
Do you know where he came from?
No.
Incarnate Word. So that's how quickly that one teetered off.
He's Cam Ward.
Oh, you're right. Heisman winner, lock it in, Zach Calzada. Redemption story. Book it here. All right. I have a few factor caps that I want to get into, but there's one that we absolutely have to get to. We got 5 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we hit this one, so maybe we stow away some of these other factor caps, and we're going to get into this one. So I ask you this simple question. Bill Belichick coaches at least one game at UNC. Factor cap.
I'm going to call fact on that. I think that this – and I kind of know where you're going with it, so I'll let you explain it first, but I'm calling fact right now.
So if you're wondering why I would ask, it seems like probably such a ridiculous question if you haven't been in the news cycle lately of, will Bill Belichick coach a game at UNC? Well, of course he will. He just got there. They're not going to fire the guy before the season starts. You so sure about that? Because there's some interesting quotes that have come to the surface that would suggest potentially otherwise. Here's a quote from an article from Awful Announcing. This comes from Pablo Torre? Pablo Torre, you think? I'm going to go Pablo Torre.
Sounds right.
If you're wondering who that is, he's an American sports writer, podcaster, and television host, formerly with ESPN. But apparently this guy is the guy you want to ask questions of Bill Belichick about because he's in the know. He's got all the deets there. He can dig up any dirt you want on it. So this is a quote from him. I think there's a chance, an absolutely real chance, that he doesn't make it to week 1 with North Carolina, Torrey said. And the reason I say that is because even before the Jordan Hudson thing became as public, even before it was from Messi's backstage to now, obviously Messi everywhere, the date that matters the most is June 1st. Now, why would June 1st matter so much? Well, that would be the date in which the buyout in Bill Belichick's contract curiously drops from $10 million to $1 million. So before Bill Belichick even coaches a game at UNC, his buyout at UNC drops by $9 million. and that's coming at the end of this month, the start of June 1st. Explain that one to me. Why would all of a sudden this one drop? Maybe UNC just wanted to hire him for all the hype, get some recruits in, and then say, hey, kick rocks, buddy. We're just going to go ahead and promote your son, and we'll move on.
It is one of the more interesting and honestly unexplainable stipulations in a contract that I've seen in a long time. It is one of those things to where it's kind of, whoa, what's going on here? I personally can't explain. I personally can't list a time off where I was like, yeah, 9 million, 90% of this buyout's going to get shaved off on this date, which, by the way, doesn't really have any significance. Signing days are already done, the spring portal window's closed. It's basically 2.5 months out from your first game of your season. I don't get it. I don't think that personally Bill Belichick did this to prop up and get like what's the end game here for Bill Belichick if he's doing this? Unless this is something that was manufactured by Jordan Hudson and negotiated by her. And at that point, this is a whole nother tinfoil hat theory that this woman is basically just fleecing this man and leeching off of his success. I would hope and like to think that just, on the basic sense of humanity, that's not what's going on. But I can't explain this. But my gut tells me that Bill Belichick will likely stay put throughout the 2020, or will at least coach one singular game in the 2025 season. Are you calling factor cap on that?
I think he coaches a game. I think that, this was probably put into the contract because we've all kind of assumed that Bill Belichick is not going to be a Tar Heel lifer. This is not a guy that's going to be coaching at this program for the next 8 years. This was always assumed to be kind of a short-lived stint in college football, maybe a redemption story back into the NFL scene. So I would imagine that this was put into his contract because they know this, that it might just last a season, and if we have to cut ties sooner rather than later, it's not going to cost either side anything. But because Jordan Hudson has now gotten bigger and because of this whole story between these two and her involvement in the program and how he might be P-whipped, if you will.
Whoa.
Hey, that's what the streets are saying, man. I didn't say the actual word, though. I mean, hey, I kept it PG, all right? I think that that's kind of made this date now of the buyout dropping by $9 million a little more significant. But circle your calendars, ladies and gentlemen, because that might be the day that Bill Belichick is no longer the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels, according to Mr. Torrey. You know what else you need to do? Circle your time clock right now because we're headed into the local hour. We'll see you in a little bit.
Welcome into Talk the Dog, the show where we find a bone to pick and a take to give. These are not hot takes. These is dog takes. Can I talk that dog? What's up? You really like that? Let's shut up and grind some tape.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the local hour. It is time to talk that dog. As the chat is inferring right now, some say it is our best hour. We got some quick news hitters that we want to talk about. Obviously, everybody is probably loaded into the show right now because Jackson Cantwell commits tomorrow, the number one prospect in the country, the number one offensive tackle in the country. Georgia's in the mix. Miami's in the mix. Oregon's in the mix. Who is it going to be? Well, we'll kind of give you our final thoughts on that one and maybe give a prediction. I don't know if we'll do that, but we'll kind of give you the final layout of this commitment and where things are heading right now, heading into tomorrow. I believe he commits at 2:30. Georgia got a commit yesterday. Jordan Smith, a safety in the 2025 class, got another addition. That's now 2 weeks, or 2 commitments within a week span. Could make it 3 tomorrow. So Georgia picking up that momentum on the recruiting trail, Kirby, as we mentioned they do during the summertime. We're also going to be hitting on some other topics like, is Georgia being doubted? There seems to be a lot of quotes in the media space right now of people saying, I'll pass up on Georgia right now. We'll try and explain maybe why those thoughts are happening. Gunnar Stockton is kind of being mislabeled, in my opinion, heading into this season. I think that people are kind of what would you call misanalyzing him a little bit. Not exactly
misinterpreting.
That's a better word for it. There we go. Misinterpreting Gunnar Stockton. Georgia has a reputation that they are known for, that Kirby Smart has created, and it's being ignored right now by many people heading into this next season. And then we're going to talk about some of these step-up candidates that we want to see flourish this season for Georgia. Maybe some names that people aren't talking about, maybe some names that could really spark Georgia's successful season in 2025. And you already know that the wheel is loaded with plenty of topics. So, as I mentioned, we got a loaded local hour for you. But let's start with the most pressing news, Kirby. Jordan Smith commits to University of Georgia. I think that makes it 8 commitments now for Georgia in the 2025 class.
I believe that's 9 now.
9 commitments in the 2025 class.
Yeah, I remember writing the article yesterday. Go check it out on Bulldogs on
You
SI.
write?
So, what?
You write articles?
Yeah, do you?
Yeah, I write articles, yeah.
Sick, man. Where could we find those articles if we do?
You can find them over at Bulldogs, Georgia Bulldogs on SI, so go check that out. Anytime you need some breaking news, whatever you want, me and Kirby got you covered along with the other boys over there on that site. But yeah, Jordan Smith commits to Georgia. A good old Mother's Day commitment, Kirby. So big news for Georgia to obviously add in some. And I think it's significant that it is at the safety position because we saw how they treated it in the transfer portal. They took a bunch of stabs.
Mm-hmm.
They added multiple players there. And I know that some of them have multiple years of eligibility. I think there is one player, I want to say it's Adrian Maddox, who only has 1 year of eligibility. So need to kind of beef it back up because you got KJ Bolden this year, and then next year he's likely headed off to the NFL draft after his 3rd season with the University of Georgia. So, and Ja'Cory Thomas, he's a veteran guy that very well could leave the roster after this year. So really got to build the depth back up. They're starting to do that in this class.
Yeah, this is their 3rd commit in this class. And by the way, you don't always play the position that you're recruited by. That's the beauty of a defensive back, is that safety and cornerback are somewhat interchangeable. I believe Chris Smith, one of the better Georgia safeties of the Kirby Smart era, was recruited as a cornerback. I mean, we've seen a lot of instances where guys switch positions, so that could be something that we see take place here. I know that you go to the recruiting boards and you're looking like, we have 9 recruits, 9 commits, and 33% of them right now are safeties. That's kind of interesting. So don't only look at them as safeties. Look at them as defensive backs. There might be some cornerbacks playing in this position as well.
And this is a player from Houston County as well. Brooks is down there in that region. That is why he's not on the show. I forgot to lead off the show with that. In case you're wondering, yes, Brooks is not sitting mute right now in the studio with us. He is not here because he is on the recruiting trail.
Brooks will never be sitting mute in the studio. If Brooks is in this studio,
you will know.
There will be a microphone in front of his face, and he will be giving you takes. I can assure you that. So if you go 2 minutes without hearing Brooks, just know he's off doing other business elsewhere.
Brooks isn't in today. But again, another top 100 player at the safety position. You mentioned it. Maybe there's some potential where he might play some cornerback for Georgia. We'll see how that goes. But, I mean, this is a big guy. He's listed at 6'1.5", 185 pounds. So certainly seems like a safety mold there. But we know how Georgia likes their cornerbacks. They certainly like them big and tall, and he fits that as well.
I mean, I think Daniel Harris is kind of the prototypical body type of what Georgia corners are starting to what they want their corners to become. I think that taller, longer, can still turn and run is kind of what they want now. So it makes sense as they go a guy like this. Do we have film on this guy?
We do have film, but I do want to mention this of, obviously all the attention over the past couple weeks has been on Jared Curtis's commitment, and then we knew that Jackson Cantwell was shortly going to follow him after he moved back his commitment date from April 30th to now May 13th. Well, why was Jordan Smith not on the radar? Why was this one not talked about a whole lot? Well, I think kind of what you're seeing with some of these commits is they got to lock down their spots, man, because we know how quickly Georgia will load up this recruiting class. They typically take 26 to 27 guys in a recruiting class. So if you got the green light and Georgia wants you and you want to go to Georgia, well, probably better off to go ahead and lock down your spot in this class now as opposed to waiting until August or September or even early National Signing Day, because I think you're seeing that with more and more kids. When Brooks goes out there and talks to these kids and you listen to the interviews, it seems like every single one of them are saying, I want my recruitment locked down by June. I want my recruitment locked down by July. Now, the reasoning might be because they want it to be done and over with before their high school season starts, but I think it's also because they want to lock up their spots, man. If they want to go to Georgia, they're going to go ahead and do so. But, yes, we do have tape. So let's go ahead and check that out. I have not watched it. I don't think you have either.
I have not.
So this is going to be an authentic reaction to this.
And I know safety tape is sometimes hard to watch, but I mainly what I'm looking for is how he fills alleys here. If we get some defensive, like, in the ball airplay, that's going to be great. I don't know what the hell the corner was throwing back there, but that's a great way to play the ball in the air. Can you see this, JWill?
Yeah, I can actually.
Oh, I mean, here's another example.
I still got young guys. I got that 2020
Here's
vision.
him lining up at corner, so turning and running is obviously very good. Plays the ball well in the air. I'd hope that it's an interception.
Just a good coverage rep? That's what it looked like to me, just a good coverage rep right there.
Filling alleys well again.
Love that. So off the bat, seeing the versatility of this player, seeing what Houston County is asking him to do, playing both safety and then also sliding in at cornerback as well. Ooh, here's an Athens local high school, Clark Central right here.
Mm-hmm. Doing a little return kick, showing off the athleticism. I think my favorite thing that I see about him on tape so far is that he plays very smooth. He doesn't look like he's very jagged. The movements are very smooth. He looks like he's playing calm. There's a couple of guys you see on the field, and we saw this a lot with, you see this a lot with young guys of like they're playing under pressure. He seems very comfortable in the way he's playing.
Yeah, he does.
Reading run lanes well.
Good mover.
Willing to stick his nose in there. I think this is a great pickup. I think this is exactly what you want in a corner, or a safety position for Georgia, just a defensive back position in general. Willing to make plays on tackles, can turn and run well. Clearly has athleticism. I mean, for
special teams player. That's a dog right there.
Yeah.
Special team. That's multiple special teams clips right there.
We would get up on the board, however, we're understaffed right now, which means that someone's on the.
Gosh.
Oh, that was a block.
That kid got laid out.
Do we have track times on this kid?
I was just trying to figure that out. I can't find any at the moment. Let me see.
Okay, so they play a lot of single high safety, and they just let him come down and fill runs. Now I wonder what kind of offenses they're going against. If you're playing wing tees, yeah, you're probably just going to be filling run games. But no, that's really good tape, and I think it's I like it. It makes sense to me. People raise a couple of questions of why are we taking this many defensive back stabs? Well, because like you just said, your safety position has gotten cleared out as of late, so it makes sense to why you would do this. I like it. I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's a smart player from what I can tell on that.
Okay, it looks like we do have track times on him. It looks like in the 100-meter, he ran a 10.78, which was a personal record for him.
Good Lord, that's a fast kid. All right, so.
He checks all the boxes right there.
He checks all the boxes that you would want at Georgia. Very good commit, very good pickup. 24 hours from now, Georgia may or may not have another commitment, and this has been, other than Jared Curtis, in my opinion, one of the most closely followed recruitments of the 2026 recruiting class. So Jackson Cantwell, one of the highly coveted offensive line commits or recruits he's in Milton, correct?
Jackson Cantwell? He's in Missouri.
I'm tripping. Dude.
Out of the state, that is a Missouri kid right there.
I saw the eagle helmet on his head. I was like, that's not Milton.
It kind of does. You know what?
It burnt the image in my head for Milton.
You're right.
So I was like, that's on me, Jackson. But no,
respectable guess there.
He's out of Missouri, and this is one of the more highly coveted offensive tackle recruits in the class right now.
I mean, yeah, he's the number one player in the country according to some recruiting sites. I mean, some consider this guy to be the best player in the 2026 recruiting class. This one is coming down to Georgia. It's coming down to Miami. It's coming down to Oregon. I believe Ohio State is also in the mix. I think they were included in the final list. But everybody is saying that this one is pointing to either Georgia, Oregon, or Miami. And just to kind of break this one down, Oregon got a visit to close out April, and then Jackson announces that he's going to take a visit to Georgia ahead of his commitment date. That results in him pushing back his commitment date as well. He pushes it back to May 13th. He was on campus in Athens this past weekend. Jared Curtis was also in attendance with him as well, so he's in his ear a little bit. He's helping him recruit to Georgia. Some believe that those two are tied, that if Jared Curtis would have went to Oregon, then Oregon would have established themselves as the leader, but instead Curtis is at Georgia, so maybe that has pushed him over the edge just a little bit in this one. But to kind of break down all the sides here, it seems like Miami has the highest offer. I think some people are reporting like $5 million. That's what the reported offer for Jackson Cantwell is. So Miami is the one that's saying, we got the money, brother. We got the dough. That's what our offer is for you. Come be a Hurricane. Oregon, obviously going to be spending a lot on this player, but anybody involved in this is going to be spending a lot of money on this football player. Again, he's the number one player in the country. Oregon, not as high as Miami, but have kind of reestablished themselves a little bit in this one. It's made it a little bit more interesting. It kind of felt like maybe this was just coming down to Miami and Georgia, and then Oregon comes right back in. It's like, hey, don't forget about us, Bubba. We got Dan Lanning, and we got all these boys. We're stacking up our recruiting class. We'd love to have you. And then you have Georgia, and I think the most significant thing about Georgia and their chances in this recruitment is we talked about it with Jared Curtis, a 5-star quarterback, one of the top players in the country, took a bit of a pay cut to come to Georgia, did not take the top dollar amount that was offered to him to come to Georgia. So it's significant that he is on campus or was on campus with Cantwell this past weekend. Another 5-star saying, hey, I took a pay cut to come here. I wanted to come to Georgia. I wanted to play for the Georgia Bulldogs. How about you do the same for me? And kind of laying that out, saying, like, if I can do it, you can do it as well. Don't let money hide things away from you of what is truly in front of you.
And this is going to be, look, The price tag on this commitment is going to be very high, even if you're Georgia, even if there is a discount, which we assume that Georgia is getting. Of the 3 teams that are in this commitment, right, or in this race right now, Georgia will be paying the cheapest out of all of them. The question is the discount worth it to Jackson Cantwell? I can't answer that. Brooks can't answer that. JWill can't answer that. And frankly, there's not a lot of insiders out there that can answer that as well. The Jared Curtis idea that he has also been involved in this recruitment and is kind of saying, hey, come play with me. They were down in Athens a couple weeks ago, a few days ago, actually, not even that long. It bodes well for Georgia. It excites you as a Georgia fan to think that, okay, if you got the number 1 quarterback in this class talking to the number 1 player about perhaps like, hey, let's take a pay cut. Let's go be great. We've seen the numbers. We've seen out of the 3 of these teams, Georgia's draft history over the past 5 seasons under Kirby Smart is better than anyone. I mean, yeah, Miami's probably going to pay the most, but what's the long-term outlook there? That would be my question if I'm Jackson Cantwell of, okay, you're going to pay me clear and away the most money. Problem is, where is it going to go to after that? I mean, I can sign a 4-year contract, or I can get less for here and then sign my first-round NFL contract. Bonus money is untouchable in the NFL. The first-round bonus money will always trump whatever any school can pay you, unless they're saying, you know what, here's 50% of our budget. Here you go, kid. We're gonna give you 40% of our yearly budget. So it all comes down to, and it's been outlined before, will the discount be enough? And is the prestige of that program, is that enough to outweigh the higher dollar prices? Because it seems to me like you get on a linear curve here. You've got a school that's not going to pay as much, but the ceiling's a lot higher. Yeah. You got a school that's going to pay more, but the ceiling's higher, but it's not as high. Then you have a school that's going to pay the most. Ceiling's probably not as high here. I don't think Miami's out here producing first-round offensive line talent. Now, if you believe that you're good enough, it doesn't matter where you go get your money. But we've seen time and time again that can hinder the growth of players greatly.
And, I mean, on top of that, if you want to get into the real thick of things there's a good chance Mario Cristobal is no longer the head coach at Miami by the time you finish your career. Now, you could say the same thing about Kirby Smart if you wanted to. This is a guy that's about to enter the 10th year at the University of Georgia. I mean, that's a long time for a head coach in this league. So, really, probably the most stable head coaching spot right now between the 3 would be Oregon, because Dan Lanning doesn't appear that he's going anywhere. But on top of that, you mentioned Georgia pumps offensive linemen in the NFL. But maybe a counteract to that statement is Georgia gets into the league, but let's talk about what they've done in the league. I mean,
we did this last week.
Your 2 most successful offensive linemen over the last 10 years is David Andrews, who was undrafted, and Andrew Thomas, who was a first-round pick, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL right now, and is getting paid as such. And you still have some guys that just entered the league, like Tate Ratledge and Dylan Fairchild and Jared Wilson, who are to be determined. But the recent track record, it's not like, hey, these guys are going to the league and dominating, but they most certainly do get you paid, and that's the ultimate goal.
And, I mean, the point you're saying, those 2 guys collectively in their college careers, 75% of it was played under Mark Richt. So you can't even say that this is a Kirby Smart statistic of these guys, have success stories in the NFL. The NFL track record of offensive linemen under Kirby Smart has not been great. Let's just be honest. The bonus money's been very good. There's been a lot of first-round picks. And, again, we just talked about bonus money will trump NIL money any day of the week. If you're talking about the outlook for your career, though, I'm not sure Miami offers you anything better.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily sure Oregon under Dan Lanning has offered you anything better. Like, there's some instances. The Sewell kid in Detroit looks really, really good. Looks like he's going to have a really long and prosperous career. But that's one example. So if I'm Jackson Cantwell, and again, I'm not Jackson Cantwell, so don't take this as me saying this is what's going to happen, this is what his thought process is. But, yes, I'm going to take a pay cut, but I'm going to play with more talent. My chances of becoming a first-round draft pick and getting money exponentially increase. And by the way, my chances of playing for national titles exponentially increase.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm not 18 years old anymore. I'm still young, and money is money. And money.
You're an old man now.
Yeah, I'm an old 2-degree graduate, dude. I'm past. I'm washed. So I have this old age. 17 or 18 years old and say, hey, kid, you sign here and I got you $5 million. It doesn't matter where the school goes. You're a first-round draft pick no matter who you play for.
Mm-hmm.
I might be more apropos to sign in Miami. I personally feel like his best opportunity would be going to Georgia or Oregon, which is kind of interesting as to why Miami's playing such a role in this. Money is clearly a big issue not an issue, but clearly a big driving factor in that. Otherwise, I don't think Miami would be in this recruitment.
They know what they had to do to stay in this recruitment, and they had to have the biggest offer, and that's what they were offering. Is the biggest offer amongst the three, and it's why they're still being heavily considered in this one and why this commitment will be interesting.
I also think it was very, very interesting. Kind of like, wow, you're right, to talk about how Kirby Smart is getting up there in his tenure.
Yeah.
Like, Kirby Smart's entering year 10. He's the second longest tenured coach in the SEC, and you'd have to imagine within the next 2 or 3 years he will be the longest tenure because – let's be honest, the Mark Stoops Kentucky experience might be coming to a close after this year.
Very well could be. Now, the other side of this recruitment, too, that we've kind of had conversations about, that we get asked about a lot when it comes to Jackson Cantwell is he is rated the number 1 player in the country, and he is a 5-star, and he is the best offensive tackle in this class. But when people go watch him and they go check out the huddle link of him and they go watch his tape, people are kind of saying, this guy doesn't look like the best player in the country. This does not scream to me, oh, this is the best tackle prospect in this entire class. I've kind of been of the belief that Jackson Cantwell is the best offensive lineman in the 2026 class, but as we've mentioned, the 2026 class doesn't necessarily measure up to the rest of these classes in years prior of what the offensive line classes have looked like, specifically in the state of Georgia. Again, this is a guy in Missouri. This is not a Georgia State product or anything like that. I mean, this guy will be moving himself a couple states over to come to the University of Georgia or wherever he goes. I mean, you're either choosing Oregon on the other side of the country, you're choosing Georgia on the east side, or you're going down south to Miami. So regardless, he is going to be an out-of-state product wherever he goes. But I think that what's been mentioned about him, and when we watched his tape, I believe it was last week that me and Brooks did when we did our sub-episode, which you should go watch, this is a guy that's going to play through the whistle. He fights his ass off every single snap, and that's what Georgia fans have always wanted in their offensive lineman, a guy that is, I mean, you got to blow the whistle 4 times to make sure that, hey, we don't want to hurt any of our defensive linemen. Let's take it a little bit easy, Jackson, today. That's not how he plays, man. I mean, this guy plays, and he's technically sound. I mean, when you watch him, he's pretty clean for the most part. So I think it's a high floor more than anything of like what you're betting on with Jackson Cantwell.
That's exactly what it is.
This guy is a high floor when he comes in. He's probably going to be ready to play. He might even be a first-year starter for you depending on where he goes, what the situation is and like that. But he also has some room to where he can grow and maybe he can build himself into like, this guy is the number 1 tackle in his NFL draft class.
Yeah, and you hit on it perfectly. The 2026 class might not necessarily have as many heavy hitters as there have been in the past. Teams are buying the floor with these recruits right now. You're not buying the fact that, oh, he might be the number 1 overall. He might be a team-changing player. We talked about it. It doesn't necessarily jump off the tape. We've seen sexier tape at the tackle position. We've seen, oh my God, we have to have this guy before. He looks unstoppable. They're buying the floor. Mm-hmm. Georgia, Miami, Oregon all believe that this kid is regardless as to when it comes, he will be a starter for them at some point. He will be a very good starter. He might not be the world's greatest tackle. He might not be, the number 1 first overall pick in the draft. He might not be the first tackle taken in the NFL draft. But they are buying the floor for him, and that is a very, very valuable asset in a world where the recruiting and the talent portal has been so spread thin. We talk about it all the time. Depth is less than it has been ever before. So we're seeing teams kind of shift their dynamic to, okay, we need to assess buying the floor more than we do buying the ceiling. Does Jackson Cantwell have the highest ceiling of all time as offensive line prospects? I don't think so. But he's got one of the higher floors, and that's what teams are valuing right now.
Yeah, and if you're a Georgia fan, you'll sign up for that right now considering what happened to you last season. Not even of the fact of to say that, oh, Georgia's offensive tackle sucked last year. No, that's not what I'm saying at all by this. But say that Monroe Freeling or Ernest Green or whoever is going to be the starting tackles when if Jackson Cantwell does choose Georgia, when he gets there, say one of them gets hurt, well, what if you did have a high-floor guy like Jackson Cantwell who could slide in at right tackle for you, and he's going to be good for you? You're going to be okay. You don't have to worry about that. I mean, that's something you would sign up for right now, and it would be a big pickup for Stacey Searles despite all of the crap that he got last season. This guy's getting it done on the trail so far. This would be a massive one. And going back to the original point of, like, what you're choosing between, I mean, if you want to tee up a kid's career better for an offensive tackle, if you're Jackson Cantwell, go play with Jared Curtis at the University of Georgia. Let him ball out, and then you're immediately attached with him. It's, 5-star Jackson Cantwell and 5-star Jared Curtis are leading the Georgia Bulldogs to another national title. Like, that's a storyline in and of itself. Disney couldn't write anything better right now. I mean, that's it right there. That's
Disney's not writing shit now. They're just redoing all their other old movies.
Come on now, don't do Walt like that.
Do we, bro? Walt's been gone for 60 years.
He just rolled
his
over.
head's frozen in a cave somewhere. It doesn't matter.
You believe that? You think so?
Do we dare put predictions for this?
I don't feel like I am in the position to be out here giving. I could give you a little slidey scale majiggy, I guess. You want to do a slidey scale majiggy? That's all the hype right now.
That's Brooks's thing, dude. Let
No?
him do that. My gut tells me this. Georgia has not played these types of games recently. They are recently new to the, hey, we'll spend a bag on you field. There's always been somewhat of a discount, and there's still a discount here. However, they're paying exponentially more than they have in the past. You combine that with the fact that they've always succeeded in recruiting despite not paying as much, I think that they're going to be able to out-recruit Oregon. I think that they're going to be able to out-recruit Miami. My gut tells me that Jackson Cantwell is a dog 24 hours from now, but take that with a grain of salt. I've been wrong on recruitments before. The industry's been wrong before, so it's one of those things that it's a 50-50 coin flip for me, but I'm leaning Georgia.
I'll phrase it this way. I think Georgia's in the best position heading into the commitment day, considering that they got the last final word in regards to they had a visit, they got a weekend with him, they had their 5-star quarterback with him as well. I think that they got the best final word, and they are in the best position right now. But this one is ultimately going to boil down to this of, does Jackson Cantwell want the most money? Does he want to go to Miami for the biggest bag and still be a great player for the Hurricanes? Or does he want to go to Georgia and take a bit of a pay cut, play with Jared Curtis, do all those things, and help ignite this 2026 class for Georgia? Or does Dan Lanning and the Ducks pull off what would seem like a miracle and beat out both of them and get themselves rolling and say, you got us the first time, Georgia, but not this time. We're taking Jackson Cantwell. I think that's just what it's going to boil down to. I do think that it is going to be either Georgia or Miami for the reasons that I mentioned prior. It'll just ultimately boil down to what does Jackson Cantwell want and what does Jackson Cantwell's camp want in this.
Agreed. All right, Jay. Well, it's time for arguably the most recurring segment we've had over the offseason. Time to spin the wheel. Bro.
Spinning the wheel?
We're spinning the wheel.
I get so hyped to spin the wheel, man.
I
get so excited.
Here.
Some trivia.
Oh, it's got audio this time.
I think it's muted, though, on the desktop. I think we're good.
Hopefully. Oh, sounds like we're talking a throwback game. 2016 Georgia versus
Oddly
UNC.
enough, I was talking to some of my friends today about this football game. Yours truly was in attendance for this one. I was at Kirby Smart's first game as a head coach in the Georgia Dome.
The last Georgia game in the Georgia Dome.
The last time I was ever in the Georgia Dome was for the Georgia versus North Carolina game. This was the return. I mean, you couldn't have built this one up any more perfectly for Georgia. I mean, it's the return of Nick Chubb from his injury. Oh, I'm orange now. I don't know if I like that.
It's the Breaking Bad filter. Don't worry. Camera 2 has been acting a fool lately, so.
Man, hate to see it. But the return of Nick Chubb from his injury, Kirby Smart's first game as a head coach. These were two ranked teams at the time, a top 25 matchup. I believe Georgia was like 16. UNC was like 19 or something like that. And it ended up being a great football game. Nick Chubb goes off for 222 yards. I still believe that when he broke off that 50-plus yarder for a touchdown, that was one of the loudest stadium pops I've ever heard in my life.
Really?
Yeah, swear. Despite the fact that it was in the Georgia Dome, that was one of the loudest stadium pops I've ever heard.
I remember this game as the, quote, introduction game. This was the introduction you got to Jacob Eason, the introduction to Kirby Smart, the reintroduction to Nick Chubb. People were kind of like, that injury was gruesome last year at Tennessee. Is he going to come back and be the player he was? We proved that. I mean, hell, I thought he was going to be the Heisman winner after that game. Turns out UNC, bad football team. It was the introduction to Brian Harrion. I think people forget Brian Harrion had a touchdown this game as a true freshman. And by the way, was kind of an underrated running back throughout that 2016 season.
Yeah, he was.
I remember there was a very interesting safety in this game. You don't remember this, do you?
Trying to recall.
Mitchell Trubisky threw a intentional grounding in his own end zone.
Oh, no, yeah, I don't remember that.
That's the reason the score was 33-24, correct? 33-24 was the final score, I believe. But, yeah, very interesting football game. Was a very fun game. Also, no visor from Kirby in this game.
Yeah, you're right. This was a no-visor Kirby Smart game. Pre-visor era. Maybe that's how we need to decipher errors at the University of Georgia. This was – hey, don't worry about it. This was pre-visor Kirby. He wasn't locked in yet.
This was Kirby Smart BV.
He wasn't on game yet.
Yeah. Jacob Eason's first touch. This was the Jacob Eason game. We're like, Jacob Eason's going to save this football program. His first touchdown pass was a pop pass to Isaiah McKenzie. I remember thinking that. I was like, well, that was anticlimactic. I think he had like a 40-yard bomb in that game to kind of set them up in scoring position as well. Looked very good. Looked very raw in that game. And just honestly a fun game to be a part of. I remember this game very well.
Outside of Mitch Trubisky, there's one other name at UNC. This is the only other player that I would remember from that roster.
Brother,
Ryan Switzer.
Yes.
Ryan Switzer. Boy, did a bunch of people miss on Ryan Switzer.
I was one. I thought Ryan Switzer was one of the coldest NFL wide receivers. Didn't exactly
Did
work
not
out.
pan out that way, but boy, he was a demon in punt returns. I remember clinching up a little bit every time Georgia had a punt his way.
Let's spin one more time
Oh,
before we
again?
move on.
Spinning the wheel again.
We're doing double spins.
Double spins. Haven't had double spins in a while.
Would you rather? All right, Jay, well, let me set this one up for you. Would you rather change the outcome of the 2017 National Championship game or the 2012 SEC Championship game?
This is interesting because when you first read this off, I was going to say I'm not going to pick 2017 because that wouldn't have made 2021 as special.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that was set up perfectly for a team to end its national title drought in the fashion that they did, with the quarterback that they did, with it being a pick six against Alabama, a team you haven't beaten ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just picture perfect.
And by the way, selfishly, we were both at school for it to happen. To be in Athens.
My first day as a UGA student was that game.
Really?
My very first day. I remember I had to go to one class. I still despise you for not canceling class that day, professor.
Drop the name.
Not going to name drop,
Right,
mostly because I forgot your name, because that's how little I think of you. But, yeah, I had to go to one class, and, of course, it was an 8 a.m. class. And then I drove home, watched the football game. Greatest day as a UGA student was my very first day as a student.
One of my greatest days. So what would you do? What would you change?
I think I'm going to go 2012 because if I had to pick a quarterback to get a national title, it'd be Aaron Murray. That guy deserved it more than anybody that's played at Georgia, in my opinion. That guy left everything out on the football field every single time. And just like, gosh, the fact knowing that would have been a style of a TCU beatdown in a national title game. I mean, that's what everybody assumes it would have been, because it would have been Georgia versus Notre Dame. And then, like, you don't go through this next period of time from 2012 all the way to 2021 of Georgia can't beat Bama, Alabama owns Georgia, all this stuff. Like, none of that exists anymore. You don't have this, Georgia hasn't won a national title since 1980. It happens in 2012. It just would have been better.
The butterfly effect of it is interesting, though, because if you do win that 2012 Natty, you probably don't sign Kirby Smart. Mark Richt almost guarantee Mark Richt does not get fired in 2015. You don't sign Kirby Smart. You don't have the success that you're on now. You have no idea where the Georgia program would be. So in a vacuum, I would have loved to have seen that 2012 team with Todd Gurley, Aaron Murray, Jarvis Jones, Tavares King, Alec Ogletree. And
just some DGDs, man, on that roster.
And by the way, that would have been the greatest Georgia game of all time to this day. You could even have the 21.
It is enticing, though, that outside of Aaron Murray, if there were two other players that Georgia fans would pick to have won a national title, it's Nick Chubb and Sony Michel.
Absolutely.
Like, getting to watch those two guys get a title, one that they absolutely deserved as well from everything that they had been through in their careers, that would have been pretty sweet too. But I think I'd still lean the 2012 one.
I think I might go 2017.
That one, which one hurts more, though?
The 2017 one hurt more for me. Really? Because, like, I was mentally prepared, and this is the ignorance of me as a young fan. I was mentally preparing when we were up 13-0 at halftime, like, we're gonna win the national championship. We're gonna beat Alabama. And I think that there was still, and again, this is 13 years ago now, there was still some kind of questions of, even if we do beat Alabama, can we beat Notre Dame? And, of course, seeing how that game turned out, everyone's like, yeah, Georgia would have killed them. But the not knowing was kind of made it a little bit less. Like, we were so close in 2017. 30 minutes away, an interception from Tua Tagovailoa away from being national champions. Whereas, yeah, we would have won that Notre Dame game, but there's always that, what happens up in the air, styles make fights type thing. So I go 2017.
Man, I would never forget that night, because not only did Georgia lose the national title, but after that, I had procrastinated some homework, as I usually do, because I had school the very next day that I was supposed to do over Christmas break. I had to stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning and finish some reading that I was supposed to do.
If I'm remembering correctly, we didn't have school that Monday. We had a snow day.
Oh, good for you.
I vaguely remember not going to school the whole day, being like, I'm watching national
I had to go to school, and it was miserable.
Sorry.
It was not a good time.
No. We had school the Monday of the Natty. Tuesday I had to go to school. I didn't talk to anyone. Very sad day for me at school.
I'm pretty sure my teacher was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No." Just cuddle up in the corner.
You had a rough 365 as a Falcons fan and Georgia fan.
Hey, all right. Now, you didn't have to reopen that wound, all right? Jeez.
What was it like watching the Falcons blow a 28-3 lead and then watching our sweet dogs blow a 13-point lead?
Unlike anything you would ever experience in your sports fandom life, even though you're an Oakland A's fan, it gets worse. Trust me, it can be a lot worse. Horrible. God, it still gets me fired up thinking about it. But the thing that kills me the most is I remember going into halftime and I was like, it's not safe. It's Tom Brady. It's Tom Brady, man. We're not safe. And
So you were the doomsdayer. Everyone was like, shut up.
I wasn't a doomsdayer, but I was
Jonathan, shut up. We're fine.
Look, I wasn't a doomsdayer, but I was just like, man, it's not safe, man. It's not. And sure enough, it wasn't. All right. Let's get into another topic because I think this one is rather pressing and one that I want to talk about because I think that people are misevaluating Gunnar Stockton. They are misinterpreting him, and I think it's leading to not necessarily disrespect, but I think it's kind of people are overlooking so many things about this. And I see that people say Gunnar Stockton is a big question for Georgia. People rank him as the 48th best quarterback in college football. If you look at SEC quarterback rankings, he's like the 10th player on the list. And I would say that despite the fact that we have seen a very small sample size of Gunnar, and I know that it's been basically a game and a half outside of the Orange Bowl in 2023 when he got some burn. I mean, we're really talking about a game and a half of evaluation of Gunnar Stockton as a starting quarterback. I would say that in that game and a half, Christian, I know, again, it's a small sample size, and that's why there are some questions of what is this going to look like for an entire season. But in that game and a half, you first watched him lead Georgia to an SEC title game, just starting from the second half on, led them to a national title win in overtime, by the way. And he made one mistake where he was trying to throw a ball out of bounds, didn't quite get it there. They intercepted it, whatever. But outside of that, I mean, he sparks the first drive out of the gate. As soon as he comes out of the locker room, they're marching it down the field. Gunner's bringing the juice. He brings some excitement to the offensive players, and you can tell he's captivating that room, and people are really excited for Gunner to get his opportunity. Georgia goes on, wins the SEC title. They get a first-round bye in the playoff, and then Gunner gets his first official start against Notre Dame. And quite a few things went wrong in that Notre Dame football game. The kickoff went wrong. Your offensive line wasn't playing as well as they did. Georgia's defense couldn't get some crucial stops. They had some dumb penalties on third downs. But Gunnar Stockton was far from a problem in that game. In fact, Gunnar, I would say, was doing everything right to keep Georgia in a position to win that game. I thought he played rather clean, and he made some explosive plays too, one that was missed out on.
Yeah, I think you used the word perfectly pre-show. That kind of made me just realize like what it is. You said Gunnar Stockton played fine. That's exactly what Gunnar Stockton has played fine through a quarter and a half. He played good enough to get you in a position to win the SEC championship when you were down at halftime. He played fine to the point where, yeah, you lost that game against Notre Dame, but no one really pointed their fingers and said, well, if we had better quarterback play, we could have won that game. Gunnar Stockton has been fine for 6 quarters of football right now, and you can't sell fine.
Yeah.
Fine doesn't sell. Like even when Garrett Nussmeier was coming in the 2024 season, it was, hey, remember in the 2022 SEC championship when he lit up a national championship Georgia defense? There was something sexy about him. Arch Manning is Arch freaking Manning. The name alone is sexy. Gunnar Stockton drives an 30-year-old F-150. He doesn't play the game in a way that's like, oh my gosh, look at this. He doesn't light the world on fire. He plays fine. And and that seems like such a slight to him. And like I'm saying, like he's not a great player, doesn't do things over the edge. He is a very, very good quarterback. But right now, he hasn't proven himself as anything other than fine, and no one's going to really buy into fine. You can't sell fine as a top 10 quarterback. You can't sell fine as a Heisman contender. Not saying he can't be these things, but up until this point, that's what he's been.
And let's get it straight. I'm not lobbying for Gunnar Stockton to be a top 5 quarterback in your rankings this preseason or anything like that. But I think there's more to this football player than what people are seeing, and it's not to any fault of his own because, like you're saying, it's hard to sell the 4-star quarterback from Rabun County, Georgia, who wasn't like this highly coveted 5-star prospect, who doesn't have like this 1% trait on him other than he could throw the piss out of the football if he wants to. But I think that what people will learn to love about Gunnar, and this is what will get people on board with him, and you saw it for a glimpse in the Texas game, but you only saw it for a short glimpse, and you really had to be paying attention to realize it, is let people start watching Georgia on Saturdays this fall, and they watch 14 truck through a safety, or they watch 14 talk some smack to a defensive player after he makes a big run or anything like that, and he's got some swag to him and he's got some shit to him, people are going to start hopping on board with this guy because Stetson had a little bit of this, but I think it's a different type of Gunnar brings the juice as opposed to what Stetson brought. Because I think Stetson brought a whole lot of confidence, and Gunnar does too, but Gunnar brings a little bit of swag with him, and I think it's going to be a little bit different than Georgia fans have seen or anybody has seen of the quarterback position from Georgia, especially if you go like what Jake Fromm was at Georgia and then what the early parts of Stetson Bennett was and then what Carson Beck was now. here's this Southern Georgia quarterback who drives a Ford F-150 who's going to talk some shit to you, lower his shoulder into you, and hit you into the ground and bounce your melon off the turf.
I think Gunnar Stockton, in my opinion, is, but he can be the exact quarterback that Georgia needs. You don't need a world on fire, light the world on fire showstopper. You don't need the dual threat guy that can extend and make these crazy throws. You don't need the 1% arm talent. You need a guy that's going to play gritty, that the team is going to surround himself with. Everyone talks about how the demeanor of that football team changed when he came in the second half, and how they drove down the field and scored a touchdown when they hadn't been able to do so for 30 minutes under Carson Beck, despite the fact that they were wide receiver drops and you had to settle for field goals multiple times. You saw, it was palpable how different that team played under Gunnar Stockton. Mm-hmm. I think if you can get 13, 12, as many games as you get this season of that, people are going to buy into the Gunnar Stockton experience much more in 2026. But up until then, it is going to be that he's kind of mislabeled, and he's kind of, people don't necessarily understand what he is, because you can't really display that in 6 games from the outside. If Gunnar Stockton played for, I don't know, Michigan State, we wouldn't be able to talk about how, this is what this kid's going to do for this team.
And let's be real. The other part of this is nobody got to watch a spring game. Unless you were in attendance, unless you were covering the football game, nobody got to sit down on a weekend and watch Georgia's spring game just to see what is Gunnar Stockton, where is his improvements, what does he look like as Georgia's starting quarterback now that he is the guy. Nobody got to watch that this spring, and that's prime time overreaction season for quarterbacks, of watch a quarterback slinging around the football field a couple of times in a spring game, have a couple of big plays in it. Gunnar Stockton, dark horse Heisman winner. You didn't get that this spring because people didn't get to watch it. You got to see short snippets of Georgia's spring game. And I would say, too, like for me, I got to watch Gunnar throw at Georgia's pro day. I think Georgia's going to be fine. And I think that plays in. Again, Gunnar Stockton is going to be a fine quarterback for Georgia. He's accurate in the system that Mike Bobo is going to configure for him. And we saw that they are going to change the offense, what the kind of style of offense they are moving to with Gunnar Stockton. It's going to be much more of a linear play style. So, and 2, he's going to help out the run game. I think that solves out some issues as well. Other things that we mentioned about Gunnar that people who aren't consistently glued into the Georgia beat likely would not know about Gunnar. And again, I think that this will be something that grows as the season progresses, and more people are going to be buying into what 14 brings to Athens and what he does for this Georgia football team.
I wholeheartedly agree.
All right. Let's kind of go on to this train of things kind of maybe being disrespected a little bit, but there's been some talk that Georgia's being disrespected this year, and I'm not going to
print the 7 and 5 T-shirts.
Oh yeah,
they ain't doing shit.
Kirby's eating it up. I bet it's on the bulletin board. Put it on the lockers, everything like that. But to kind of sum everything up, there's been some talk of Georgia's not in some people's top 5s. Georgia's not in some people's top 10s. We're not going to plaster anybody's rankings or quotes on this, but you guys attend this show enough and you guys listen in enough to know that we have brought you quotes saying that, hey, Georgia, kind of questionable about them. Texas is a new powerhouse. I mean, David Pollack even said recently that they're not in his top 5. He said, where are the dudes? Where are Georgia's playmakers? I don't think Georgia has that right now.
Asking where dudes are?
Yeah. Maybe you'll know. Maybe you can help a guy out.
You've been sending shots my way the entire show.
I don't have anybody else to do it.
I don't appreciate this dynamic we've built here. I don't like it at all.
Anyways. There's kind of been created this narrative that people are sleeping on Georgia, people are disrespecting Georgia. I think that this is an opportunity for us, though, not to sit here and say, the Dogs are winning the Natty, the Dogs are going 12-0 this year.
Doubt us now. Doubt us now. I dare you.
Kirby Smart's loving this. I guarantee it. We're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to kind of justify within reason and then build into another segment. So stick with us. We're not hopping on board of this train that Georgia is not going to be potentially in contention for a national title this year. But let's be realistic about Georgia's roster right now. There are some holes. There are some questions. One of the biggest ones being, is the offensive line going to improve? Because injuries, some people want to say maybe that is a cop-out. Like, oh, that's a cop-out. Everybody deals with injuries. We're Georgia. We should have an offensive line be able to step up and play. But Georgia dealt with a significant amount of injuries last year. Is the offensive line going to step up? You lost a lot of guys on the defensive line. You lost Michael Williams. You lost Jalen Walker. You lost Chaz Chambliss. You lost Nazir Stackhouse. You lost Warren Brinson. You lost Tyrone Ingram-Dawkins. It's Kristen Miller and who else? Mm-hmm. That's kind of the next biggest question. Safety. You lost Malachi Starks. It's great that you have KJ Bolden, who's playing alongside him, and then wide receiver. Like, surely the drops are not going to continue for Georgia. Surely they're not going to lead the nation in drops again. But are they going to finally be able to elevate that room and play up to the standard that people have been hoping for really the last 2 years, maybe even really the last 3 years, because that 2023 season got hindered a little bit because Brock and Ladd got injured and you missed them quite a bit. So there are some valid reasons why someone might question Georgia and why maybe some people are backing off a little bit.
And I think people have also married what happened in 2024 is going to be kind of a precursor to what's going on in 2025. We talked about how Georgia got manhandled in certain games. Georgia lost games that we've never seen them lose for. Georgia was more penalized than they've ever been last year. I think that was kind of a misstep of that. They were not as disciplined as you saw in the 2022 and 2021 seasons.
Very uncharacteristic.
There were a lot of uncharacteristic. Oh my God, I'm having a stroke.
Hard. 2 degrees and this guy can't speak English.
Having a stroke, dude. It's a medical emergency.
Oh, my bad.
There were a lot of uncharacteristic moments last year that made you go, that's not what Georgia football looks like. And I think that's kind of gotten carried over into, well, it's what we saw last year, so we'd have to assume it's what we're going to see this year. Like you said, I don't think there's going to be as many drops this year. I don't think they're going to lead the nation in drop passes. I don't think they're going to be one of the more penalized teams in the country. I don't think they're going to have a negative turnover deficit. Don't think things like that are going to carry over. I think 2024 was its own entity. I think there was multiple times last year where it's like, when does that happen if you're Georgia? That hasn't happened at all under Kirby Smart at all. So seeing it now is so weird. I think 2025 is going to be a big step for that. But the problem is you can't unmarry that sometimes because you saw 15, 16 games worth of it last year. Let's be honest. Georgia was very sloppy at times. They got off to extremely slow starts, something that honestly has been an issue for the last 2 seasons.
Yep.
So there's a lot to look at and go, this isn't Georgia we saw in 21 and 22. I'm not necessarily buying the G. I get it.
Now, let's rebuttal this a little bit, though, of it's fair to ask questions about Georgia. It's fair to have some concerns about Georgia considering what they were last year. But why aren't other programs being held to this standard of asking questions? Everybody wants to put Penn State on this pedestal and say that they're the best team in the country because they have Drew Aller. I could name a litany of questions that Penn State has on their offense right now. Huh?
A litany lion?
A litany lion of concerns that I have about the Nittany Lions. But, again, like, are we for sure about Drew Aller? Do we think that he is the best quarterback prospect right now? Because that's what you're projecting Drew Aller to be. That's what everybody's been projecting Drew Aller to be for the last 3 seasons. It's still not a known factor. Who's he going to be throwing the ball to? Who are their playmakers there? Clemson potentially has the best quarterback in college football this year. That's what some are saying is he's Cade Klubnik, the best quarterback entering this season.
Some have him as a top-ranked team in the country.
Hey, Dabo Swinney had a first overall pick in Trevor Lawrence, won 1 national title the next 2 years. What happened then? Didn't win a national title. Didn't really capitalize off of that of what many thought was going to be a historic run for a college quarterback.
I mean, they did, go to the Natty or playoff 3 years in a row under him.
Sure, but again,
I mean, they capitalized. But, to your point,
what I'm saying is
wasn't they went on these ungodly runs.
Mm-hmm. And then Texas, they have Arch Manning. They have a 5-star quarterback that's great. They're just removed from having a 5-star quarterback on this roster. They just lost 5 defensive players on their roster. They just lost one of their best wide receiver weapons, or 2 wide receiver weapons as well. I mean, this was a team that had, at one point, Bijan Robinson, Quinn Ewers, and Xavier Worthy. So just because Arch Manning enters the scene, all of a sudden they're a lock. We don't have any questions about Texas. No concerns there. Nothing about that. Alabama, we just listed off a bunch of questions that we had for them in the National Hour. Ohio State, what is a quarterback situation? How do you replace all these defensive players for you guys? Oregon, Dante Moore, is he going to be able to replicate what the other transfer quarterbacks have done under Dan Lanning? Can the offensive success continue for them? And can Dan Lanning finally get over the hump in the college football playoffs? So what I'm saying is, there's questions for every single program. You can poke holes in every single program. And if I were to bet on a program that did have questions, why would I not bet on the best coach in college football right now? Why would I not bet on the coach that just ripped off back-to-back national titles, has been to the college football playoff now for 3 of the last 4 years? Why would I not bet on that despite all of the questions? I think that Georgia kind of is being held to this unfair standard because people are freaking out like, oh, last year wasn't Georgia. That's not the typical Georgia. It's the downfall of Kirby Smart. People tried to do the same thing to Nick Saban, and he responded by still being a very successful head coach at the down moments of his Alabama career.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about the parallels between this year and what Alabama went through in 2014 numerous times. Everyone's like, they're done. Nick Saban can't do it anymore. We're kind of getting that similar vibe from Kirby Smart. while there are some legitimate reasons to feel that way, I think we can all talk about how we've talked ad nauseum. 2024 is far stray from what you expect from a Georgia football team. I don't think that's the new standard at Georgia. I don't think Kirby Smart wants it to become the new standard at Georgia, but there are some legitimate concerns.
All right. Now, building into this, transitioning to our next segment of, again, we kind of laid out why it is reasonable to have questions and for people to have concerns about Georgia. But I do think that there is one thing that is consistently being ignored about Georgia, and it's a reputation that Kirby Smart has built since his arrival there. And it's the reputation of having these players that is on nobody's radar, and then all of a sudden, whoa, that player just popped out of nowhere. He's a star player from Georgia. Like, for instance, was anyone claiming Christian Miller was going to be Georgia's best defensive lineman last year?
Not that I know of.
Were you out here buying Drew Bobo stock this last offseason?
I was not buying Drew Bobo stock.
3 years ago, did you get the take that Dan Jackson would be a starting SEC safety?
No.
Okay. Was anyone claiming ahead of the 2021 season that Ladd McConkey would be Georgia's best wide receiver? No.
Not at all.
A guy named Jermaine Burton was kind of taking the spotlight, and also a guy by the name of George Pickens who got hurt that season. But still, no one was out here buying the Ladd McConkey stock just yet. Dylan Bell in 2023. That one kind of popped out of nowhere, huh? He certainly became a playmaker for Georgia. Oh, and then the poster child of it all, Stetson Bennett himself. So this builds into the question of, where's the dudes? Where's Georgia's 5 stars? And I'll admit, we can sit here right now and we cannot name a guy on Georgia's roster we would say, first-round pick tomorrow, bona fide, lock it in, no matter what. That guy is going in the first round. You could do this with Mykel Williams. You could do this with Malachi Starks. Don't really have a player of that caliber right now heading into next year's draft. But what I am saying is there's probably some names on Georgia's roster, given the history of Kirby Smart in the University of Georgia over the last 10 years, that say there's probably some names that you're not thinking of or names that you're not aware of that are very likely to play very well for Georgia, become stars for Georgia, and they very well could skyrocket up NFL draft boards by this time next year.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the issues that is not getting paid attention to as much. And it's understandable. I think this mainly stems from when you hinted on it. Yes, there always have been these guys that's like, holy shit, Georgia's got this guy. Why was no one talking about him before the season started? But for every Ladd McConkey story, there was the George Pickens and the Jermaine Burtons that were hyping.
Yes.
Up. Stetson Bennett is a great example of this. Well, people were talking about JT Daniels. No one was talking about Stetson Bennett because it was all about JT Daniels. Yep. There's examples of this where it's like, oh, that guy came out of nowhere, but it's because we were focused on someone else. I think you're looking at Georgia right now, it's kind of like, who do we look at that's, that's a star player? Jalen Walker is the prime example of this, where last year it was, hey, Mykel Williams is going to be Georgia's best pass rusher. And then it was, oh, shit, here's this Jalen Walker guy who's far and away.
Sir, Chaz Chambliss is going to lead the team in sacks.
Yeah, like stuff like that. And, even Chaz Chambliss didn't elevate to the star power, but it was one of those like, holy shit, where'd this guy come from? Like you said, Dan Jackson. Well, Dan Jackson surprised so many people because Malachi Starks was going to be playing adjacent from him. Right. And it was kind of like, oh, whoa. Is Dan Jackson playing better than Malachi Starks right now? So I totally agree with what you're saying, how there's always going to be that guy. There's going to be that guy this year where we're going to be sitting here 3 months from now talking about, or maybe longer, 4 or 5 months from now going, man, they played a lot better than any of us expected them to. They exceeded expectations by far. But the problem is right now there's not a guy where we can go, oh, we know what this guy is. And that just comes with the loss of depth that Georgia's had. It comes with the loss of experience. It comes with NIL. We've talked about it numerous times. The talent is more spread out than ever. The depth is thinner than ever. This is not just at Georgia. This is at all of the programs. So I get it when analysts look around and go, well, there's not as many guys here as there were 4 years. It's that way all around, unless you have teams that are paying $45 million for their roster. Even then, they're still unproven commodities.
And on top of that, too, Georgia has dudes on their roster right now. Georgia has really good football players on their roster right now, but they're also being held to an unfair standard because of what they just did over the last 4 years of the 2021, 2022, 2023, and even last season of look at these caliber of players that they just had, and now it's like, Christian Miller, is he Devontae Wyatt? Well, no, Christian Miller's not Devontae Wyatt. Oh, C.J. Allen, he's not a Kobe Dean. Well, no, C.J. Allen's not a Kobe Dean, but he's still a really, really good football player. Like, you can kind of go down this, like Malachi, like K.J. Bolden is going to continue to be compared to Malachi Starks. K.J. Bolden is a phenomenal football player. K.J. Bolden likely to be a first-round draft pick in a couple of years, but Like, they're just already held to this unfair standard, and that's the lens that people are going to look through it of, like, this looks completely different than what they just had.
And I also wonder if what happened last year has undercut the momentum for a lot of these guys. Like we've talked about, C.J. Allen had a decent season but wasn't great in 2024. I don't think there was any Georgia player in particular that you could say they had a fantastic 2024 season. C.J. Allen, Nate Frazier, K.J. Bolden, Dalen Everett, all of these guys have the potential to pop, even maybe be first-round draft picks.
Yep.
Dylan Bell, like the epitome of had a really, really rough 2024 season.
Mm-hmm.
They could all pop and be like, oh, wait a minute. We weren't giving these guys the proper respect they deserve. I think there's this kind of commodity and the idea that there's no dudes on Georgia right now because everyone had somewhat of a down year last year.
Yeah,
like
sure.
everyone who played in 2024 and 2023, I think we can say, with the exception of maybe a Chaz Chambliss, a Dan Jackson, had a better year in 23, and Dalen Everett had a better year in 23 than they did in 2024. So the idea that, some of these guys have taken a step back is kind of like, there's no guys here right now. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily that. It's just we haven't seen the steadily incline that we've seen before.
Yeah, and I mean, if Oscar Delp played the entire 2024 season the same way he did at the second half of the season, one, he might not still be at Georgia, but two, people are probably talking about Oscar Delp a little bit differently heading into the season. If Colby Young had played the entire season for Georgia last year, people are talking about Georgia's wide receiver and probably a little bit differently. If Zachariah Branch didn't have a little bit of a down year at USC, they're probably talking a little bit differently about Zachariah Branch heading into this season. So you can go down the list. Well, let's do this instead. Let's go down a different list. Let's just go ahead and claim and go ahead and project our players that we think are going to be what I'm calling. I don't know how you called it in your notes, but I'm calling it the step-up candidates.
I like
step-up candidates. Players that we think are in store for really, really good seasons and might exceed the expectations that are set upon them right now.
All right, I'm going to go first off, Zion Branch. I've been buying stock on this guy since he got here at first. I mean, there was some questions about injuries, some concerns. What I saw from him in the spring game, what I've heard about him in the locker room as a weight room, as a just a culture guy, I'm in love with Zion Branch as a player. I think he is in for one of these step-up years. Very similar to, I think, what J.R. Reed was, where it was, we're gonna bring J.R. Reed on. He's gonna be a solid player for us, but it's really so we can get this other guy, and then he turns out to be one of your better safeties. I think Zion Branch is someone I'm buying.
This is a guy that I'm going with because I think people are down on him, and I understand why they are down on him, but I think he's too good of a football player not to bounce back in a big way and be successful for Georgia this season. Monroe Freeling, and this is really just hinging off of one game, and it was the Notre Dame game, and then we found out that he was dealing with a shoulder injury, ended up having shoulder surgery during spring, missed time during spring as well, but heading into this season, if you get a healthy Monroe Freeling, he's going to be really good for you, and I think he's going to be a solid left tackle or right tackle, wherever you want to plug and play him at. I think he's going to have a really good season. I think you saw what he is capable of as soon as he was plugged in against Vanderbilt a couple of years ago when they had to play him as a freshman, called upon him, and he was fine for you. He's a really good player for you. But because of the bad taste that was left in people's mouths after the Notre Dame game, there's people that are quite down on him. I think he's going to be really good for Georgia. I think he's going to have a great season.
I'm going offensive line, so I'm buying Daniel Calhoun or Juan Gaston. I think one of these two guys is going to really pop for the offensive line as best as an offensive lineman can. There's not flashy plays that really come from the offensive line, but I think one of these two young guys are going to make their first full season to start, so they're going to really, really make a good impact for this Georgia offensive line.
Everybody knows about Christian Miller, but I think there's one player that I think that we've done a good job talking about, but I don't know that a whole lot of people are aware of what this guy could do for Georgia this year. Xavier McLeod, or as Brooks calls him, McLeod. He flashed last year for Georgia. Now he didn't start the entire season, and he kind of eased his way into the lineup last year. I believe he was dealing with an ankle injury to start the year, so kind of got eased into things. But this is a guy that is very twitchy. I think he can be a playmaker on the interior. I think he'll be a great complement to what Christian Miller brings, and he's going to be a big contributor on defense for Georgia this year. This is a guy that came from South Carolina, and then he still has multiple years of eligibility left after this. So I think he could make some money for himself this year. I think he's going to be a difference maker for Georgia on the defensive line.
Third and final one I'm buying for a pop here, it's C.J. Allen. We've talked about this before ad nauseum. Year 3 under Glenn Schumann, something seems to click with linebackers. They have their best years of their season, unless, injury hinders them or something like that.
Yeah.
3 years of starting is what you need under Glenn Schumann, and you're going to have your best season. I'm buying C.J. Allen stock. I think that people were kind of down on him after last year, expected him to do more than he did. Showed flashes of it, but there are also times where it's like, it's not fully there yet. I think 2025 is the year he puts it all together.
And especially knowing that it seems like, or based on what we heard, it seems like he is more comfortable this year because he is kind of taking on this leadership role in the defense, and he kind of feels like he is the guy on this defense. So that's good to know that he's already feeling a little bit more comfortable in this defense heading into this season. So I like that pick. I actually have 3 more. Daniel Harris. I think this is just a typical thing that happens in the offseason where you know who the starter is. It's going to be Dalen Everett, and then you got 2 young players that are fighting their way to get some playing time in the form of DeMello Jones and Ellis Robinson. But Daniel Harris is a good football player. Daniel Harris is an NFL caliber football player, and he played well for Georgia last year. Getting him to come back this year was big. Now, that's not to say that he's going to completely shut out Ellis Robinson and DeMello from getting playing time. Those guys are going to get playing time, but I mean, if you wanted to draw a picture-perfect Georgia cornerback, Daniel Harris is who you'd end up – that's the end result. So I think he's going to play well for Georgia this year. Going with the linebacker room, I'm going with a different guy, though. I'm going with Raylan Wilson. I think that there's always – like Chris Cole's a big talking point for Georgia this season. Justin Williams is going to get some more playing time. C.J. Allen is the main and the focal point of the defense at linebacker this year. But Raylan Wilson has played some damn good football for Georgia over the past couple of years. And I think he's been a good run stopper. He fills his gaps correctly. And I think he's just going to be one of these really solid Georgia linebackers. And when it comes to the NFL draft, it's going to be, we got this Raylan Wilson guy in the 4th round. He played at the University of Georgia. He was coached by Glenn Schumann. He started for multiple years. Yeah, we're going to take that guy. So I think Raylan Wilson's another one. And then my final one, Colby Young. Georgia has not had this X receiver for what feels like many, many years outside of Marcus Rosemi-Jack Saint, or Rojack to shorten it a little bit for you. But he was a solid option. But I think that Colby Young is really going to be the key to unlocking this offense for what they want to do this year, and that's take deep shots. And that's what he's going to be really good at. If you don't have Noah Thomas to complement him, Zachariah Branch, Dylan Bell, all those names in wide receiver. But I think Colby Young is really the X factor for Georgia this year. And he would be my pick to lead Georgia in receiving yards this season.
I would take that bet. All right, we got, 2 minutes left?
3 minutes. Don't shortchange us.
My bad, guys. Let's spin the wheel a couple more times, dude.
Kirby's trying to dip out early. Shocker.
No, I'm trying to spin the wheel, dude. How you going to say that when Brooks isn't even here? Oh, I know where we're going with this. Brock Bowers. Dude graduated.
We get to talk about Brock Bowers.
The most successful rookie season in NFL history at a tight end position, and graduated from the University of Georgia in the same time.
Skipped out on OTAs.
To get a degree. Shout out Brock Bowers. So I figured out, we don't usually talk about school a lot. We're not a school podcast. But
and by the way, I still have friends that are at the University of Georgia, and this was not a guy that would return to Athens to take some online classes. He was on campus every single day. He was in attendance for his classes. So perhaps the best tight end in the NFL right now, not shying away from going down and sitting in his real estate class.
Is he the best student athlete in Georgia history now?
He might be.
All right, we'll go one more.
Dedicated to the game.
Final spin of the day. Looks like we're getting trivia.
Trivia's a good way to end it.
I like this one. All right.
Might make me look an idiot, but
no, this is a tough one. Carson Beck's 12 interceptions in the 2024 season were the most by a Georgia quarterback in a single season since who?
In a single season. Can't be anybody too recent, I don't want to say. I don't think Stetson didn't get that many, I feel like. Not in the 2020 season or the 2021 season. Jake Fromm didn't have that many interceptions, I don't think. JT Daniels didn't have that many interceptions. Grayson Lambert protected the football too much, I feel like. Hudson Mason, I feel like, didn't throw it enough to have 12
Hudson Mason, I'll go ahead and tell you now, threw for like 2,600 yards.
Yeah, so he didn't have enough reps to throw 12 interceptions, I feel like, because he was too busy handing the ball off to Georgia stud running backs. I'm going to say Aaron Murray, true freshman season.
Ooh, you're very close. Aaron Murray, 2011 season, he threw 14. Now, the caveat to that, he threw 35 touchdowns that year. So, give and take there. But Aaron Murray's sophomore season, 2011, when Georgia went 6-6, I believe.
How many did he throw in his freshman season? Do you know?
I think he threw 10 his freshman season.
Okay, that was close.
Had a rough go of things to start out. But
I'm proud that I deciphered that correctly, though, that I got down to the right guy, deductive reasoning.
Yeah.
I got the right name, just not the right year.
No, I mean, that's a tough trivia question. So
I thought that you were going to be like, actually, Stetson Bennett actually did throw what I was like.
No, it wasn't that. Stetson never started enough games.
Yeah, that too. So that's why I knew it couldn't be him. And then I was like, well, Jake Fromm, 2019, he had quite a few interceptions. but not
He
that
actually
many.
didn't surprise me. Jake Fromm never surpassed 10 interceptions in a season.
Attaboy. True game manager.
True
Not a
game
slight.
manager. Not a slight.
JF over JF. All right. We'll be back tomorrow, guys. It will just be me and Christian again tomorrow. Brooks is set to join us back on Thursday, though. He's still in South Georgia, checking out some prospects
Georgia.
in state. You got to say it the right way. When it's South Georgia, you got to say Georgia, South Georgia. But again, love you guys. Hit that thumbs up before you leave. Like, subscribe, rate, review, do all those things for you.